Chapter 861. The battle cries and shouts of killing connected the sky, and both sides were red. They belong to the existence of endless antagonism, and when they meet the enemy they will not be merciful. Just like now, Dustless is crushing the essence of the immortal bird, Merciless. Hey. His calm face was a little loose and he was slightly surprised. Looking at Dustless's line of sight, Marco's open stomach wound was burning with warm blue dreamy flames, and the big hole gradually healed. In just a few breaths of time, it was as perfect as before. The only difference was that Marco was sweating profusely, as if he had suffered a great deal of pain. He fell to the ground powerlessly, gasping for breath. He looked like he was about to die. What an amazing fruit ability. Dustless nodded slightly. This was not the elemental transformation of a Logia ability user, but the rebirth flame of the immortal bird fruit, which repaired the previous wounds one by one. However, it was not difficult to see from Marco's panting body that this was also extremely exhausting. Just now it was the heart, this time, the head was destroyed. Can it be reborn? The moment the cold voice fell, a dazzling flash condensed on the toes, and the pirates and marines who were fighting near Dustless instinctively closed their eyes. Isn't it a bit too similar? Quietly lighting a cigarette, Kizaru turned his head and looked at the magnificent flash condensed by Dustless's feet. Even with reading glasses, his eyes were strange. Dustless's fruit ability was too similar to his, and even the tricks were the same. Hey! In his ears, the roar gathered and did not dissipate. Looking up, a beam of light swept straight, and the direction locked was Marco's head. A rare sense of death arose spontaneously. Boom boom boom, the blazing flame rose into the air, repelling a strong shock wave, and the marines and pirates who were fighting around were blown away. Under the attack of this heat wave, it was difficult for living creatures to survive. Well? Dustless's brow wrinkled and squeezed together, and he was keenly smelling something wrong. In the flame, he could vaguely see a huge figure standing beside Marco, shining brightly, and the light was as hard as iron. After a long while, the flames gradually extinguished, revealing a towering and sturdy body. Diamond Jaws? The diamonds all over his body were clearly visible, protecting the diamond jots. Marco, who was behind him, was also safe and sound. When the lightspeed kick corroded Marco, he blocked the impact with his amazing body and saved Marco's life. Diamonds are the hardest thing in the world. This level of attack can't hurt me. Jots said confidently as he patted the shiny diamond. Seeing this, Marco nodded slightly. This exaggerated defense was indeed difficult to break through. Being able to withstand Dustless's attack was the best proof. In this world, there is no such thing as an invincible ability. Everything has its limit, just like the island under our feet. Once it receives an attack that exceeds its limit, it will be dismembered and destroyed. On the other hand, your diamond is actually the same. You actually thought that your ability was invincible. All set. How regrettable. Dustless said sympathetically as he examined the diamond jots. Ha! Hearing this, Diamond Jots laughed, and immediately his strong and powerful diamond arm bombarded the ice frozen by Akiji, and he pulled out a giant ice meteorite with his bare hands. The meteorite was held high by him and the sky was dark. That diamond bastard wants to hit us with a meteorite. It's so big. Worthy of being the captain of the Whitebeard pirates, they are all monsters. Hurry up and retreat or we will definitely become a pile of meat. The marines around were silent, and they were shocked to see Diamond Jots carrying the meteorite. They were desperate and their legs were soft, and they finally couldn't bear the fear in their hearts and ran away. A group of useless wastes. Diamond Jots curled his lips and his face was full of disdain. Then he glared at Dustless and threw the meteorite in his hand. Armament hockey hardening. Dustless's eyes flashed with a cold light and he jumped up. In front of the meteorite, the human body was not worth mentioning, but even so, his arm was like a willow branch. Ka ka ka. The cracks as thick as an arm instantly spread throughout the entire body of the meteorite, and immediately under everyone's surprised gaze, it turned into countless small ice cubes. So simple? Diamond Jots, who didn't react for a while, was petrified on the spot. Although he expected the ice meteorite to be destroyed, it was as simple as eating and drinking, far beyond his expectations. It's not in line with the script he imagined. Jot's right side. A black wind swept over and Diamond Jot's eyes were empty. Apparently he was still in shock and Dustless took advantage of it. Despite being reminded by Marco, Diamond Jots realized that it was Dustless, but it was too late, and the fist covered with armament hockey roared. Ka ka ka. The unparalleled bombardment hit Diamond Jot's body, and the diamond covering his skin suddenly shattered. White powder could be seen, all of it was the diamond powder after being destroyed, and his right arm, which was completely made of diamonds, was torn apart. This seemingly simple punch instantly hit him hard, and as Dustless said, there is no invincible ability, once the attack exceeds the limit of the body, it will collapse. Chapter 862. The white powder fluttered in the wind, weak and powerless. Looking carefully at Dustless's thin arm, all the pirates and marines took a deep breath. The marines were encouraged and the pirates looked at Dustless in horror. At this level you too want to use the marine headquarters as your stage, you are still too far away. His voice was like steel without any emotion, filling the ears of all the pirates and hitting their confidence. After today the era of Whitebeard will come to an end. This guy. Not good. Marco's heart was cold and he didn't even care about Diamond Jozu. Dustless's invincible offensive shocked all the pirates. Some of the fence-sitters' eyes flashed with fear and they looked like deserters. We are pirates? Now we are in the marine headquarters. If we want to live we can only fight to the death. Marco shouted, the marine headquarters will be flattened and the Whitebeard pirates will dominate the new world. When the time comes all the people who help Ace will get benefits. The members of the Whitebeard pirates are fine, everyone is a family, but in this operation Whitebeard has invested a lot of money. Some of the forces of the Whitebeard pirates were also brought by Whitebeard to make up the numbers, and it is inevitable that there will be fence-sitters. That's right, this is the marine headquarters. We can only fight. If we don't kill the marines won't let us go. Marco's words acted like a deadly poison, annihilating and eliminating the mentality of all the pirates to escape. The timid pirates immediately turned back to shore and stared at Dustless with awe-inspiring eyes. Such a good eloquence, it's a waste of talent not to be a politician. Dustless looked at Marco with contempt. It was rare to see a pirate like Marco who could bewitch people. But, you talk too much. A bright light appeared on his fingertips, covered with a majestic penetrating force, enough to easily tear people apart. Marco was shocked when he saw this and quickly avoided it. However, a light flashed and Dustless seemed to be able to predict the future. He came behind Marco in advance and condensed a high-density light on his fingertips again. Pucci. Blood flowed out of the corner of Marco's mouth. His chest was pierced and burned, and he could see the other side of the battlefield. Boom boom boom. The dark blue dreamy flame burned on his wound once again. However, before Marco could repair his body, a heavy blow that could collapse a mountain sent him flying, and the buildings in the distance were reduced to rubble. Ka. Countless ferocious cracks spread out in the void and powerful fluctuations of power that were enough to destroy the entire island came from behind, and even because the power was too terrifying, the entire marine headquarters, no, the entire Marin Fanto was shaking. Behind Dustless, everything suddenly turned pitch black. This world-destroying power had locked onto him. Looking up, it was Whitebeard, whose eyes were about to split open. Severely injuring his two precious sons, there was no doubt that Whitebeard was enraged. He planned to personally take revenge on Dustless. This energy fluctuation that could instantly kill everything was about to destroy Dustless. Ka. The air violently vibrated. Whitebeard clenched his fist and used all of his strength to punch out. Kinsusuno. Aware of the destructive fluctuations behind him, Dustless's body overflowed with dense chakra, and a large skeleton solidified, protecting Dustless in it. Ka. The moment the golden localized Kinsusuno flashed, it ushered in a devastating blow and turned into raindrops. Before Whitebeard's fist touched Dustless, Kinsusuno on his body was crushed by the cracks in the surrounding space. Dustless's whole body was exposed to the impact of Whitebeard. Die for lousy. Seeing that Kinsusuno's defense was broken, Whitebeard's eyes were cold, and the sharpness of his fist was more than 3 points. His fist was swallowed by the tempered armament haki, and he smashed toward Dustless's head, trying to kill him. Ka. Even because the power was too shocking, the ground of the marine headquarters was torn into an abyss, boundless, almost swallowing the entire island. This was the result of not being hit. It's not difficult to imagine what would happen if a mortal body were to bear this punch. Garp. This old guy Whitebeard seems to be not right. Sengoku's eyes shot a wise luster, and his pupils stared at Whitebeard without moving. He was keenly aware that something was wrong. Whitebeard's strength was far beyond his imagination. Yes. Although I don't know how he did it, he did use some means to regain his former strength. No wonder he dared to go straight to Marlindo. Marine headquarters is in danger this time. Hero Garp also noticed Whitebeard's abnormality. This power that could destroy heaven and earth was close to Whitebeard's peak. The Marines and pirates present stopped fighting and looked at this unprecedented scene with wide eyes. Not only that, but people all over the world who watched this war through the image of Den Den Mushi had their hearts in their throats. Most people thought that the world's youngest admiral in front of them might fall. The whole world abandoned Dustless, only the endless void did not abandon him. Deep in the clouds, in response to Dustless's call, a dark crack with a length of 10 kilometers or even longer was torn by a supreme overbearing momentum, but no one in the world saw it. Chapter 863. The dark abyss in the depths of the void was like being torn apart. The uneven gaps were no different from the teeth of a shark, and it was full of soul-stirring power. Through the image of Den Den Mushi, when the world thought that Dustless would be killed by Whitebeard on the spot, his body suddenly erupted like a volcano, erupting with an explosive momentum. The whole person was like an awakened ancient dragon. The vast momentum was boundless, and a hot storm swept out from Dustless's body. Ka ka ka. The crack in the Marine headquarters destroyed by Dustless was getting bigger and bigger, and with the spread of Dustless's momentum, it trembled more violently, and there was a faint tendency to split into two. As Haushikuhaki reached such a shocking level, Garp's old eyes widened and his tone was suspicious. It seemed that the scene in front of him was a dream. Everything was so ridiculous and illusory. This momentum of Haushikuhaki was extremely overbearing. Being affected by the waves of Haushikuhaki, they couldn't help but bow down and they couldn't resist. Armament haki hardening. Leisurely turning back, Dustless's eyes spewed out more cold light, and with a more ferocious force than Whitebeard, he blasted out with all his strength, and even because of the excessive force, the flowing air was crushed. Even the space was faintly distorted. Boom boom boom, the inevitable collision of one big and one small fist. The ground under Dustless and Whitebeard's feet cracked instantly, and the two burst out with a strong impact, forming a large vacuum area, and the Marines and pirates were all killed. Cough cough cough. After a moment of stalemate, the outcome was quickly decided. Whitebeard's face changed greatly, and after a while, blood spurted out of his mouth, and his internal organs seemed to be affected, and the blood was uncontrollably vomited. Yaji. A panicked roar suddenly sounded, and the members of the Whitebeard pirates looked at Whitebeard in disbelief. If they remember correctly, this is the first time Whitebeard has been in this situation. He was beaten to vomit blood. Disappear. His eyes condensed and the strength in his hand increased by 3 points, and Whitebeard was instantly smashed. Boom boom boom. A cloud of smoke and dust rose from the ground, and then Whitebeard disappeared without a trace. A large wall 100 meters away suddenly shattered, and a huge body lay in it. Looking at this unbelievable scene, the whole world froze in an instant. About a minute later, there was a thunderous roar that could topple mountains and overturn seas. How is this possible? The strongest man in the world actually lost? Idiot, how can a person like Whitebeard fail? It must be that Marine Admiral playing tricks. Damn it, I must be dreaming. Come here. Let me slap you. That way you'll know whether you're dreaming or not. Bullshit, you idiots are mistaken. That young general must be Whitebeard's son. The white-bearded old man didn't want to kill him, so he deliberately went easy on him. Otherwise, how could the strongest man be defeated? Don't forget, he was once the most powerful pirate who rode side by side with the Pirate King. People all over the world who are watching Den Den Mushi are talking about it. Looking at Dustless lying on the rubble, their eyes were completely blinded. Dustless doesn't know what's going on in the outside world. Of course, even if he knows, he doesn't have the leisure to meddle in other people's business. The old man is not only powerful but his vitality is also surprisingly strong. Ordinary people would have been turned into meat paste by such a heavy attack. Rubbing his sore right shoulder, Dustless was surprised. Whitebeard's state is obviously different from the past. More than 10 years ago he fought with Whitebeard. At that time, Whitebeard was not as strong as he is now. With the passage of time, Whitebeard not only did not weaken, but now he seems to have become stronger. You said that he was an ordinary person. Whitebeard's face was murderous and he immediately stood up again. The members of the Whitebeard pirates breathed a sigh of relief. Whitebeard is their backbone. Once Whitebeard steps on the road, these pirates will collapse and be annihilated sooner or later. You can tear the island. Looking at the large cracks that almost swallowed the entire Marlin, Dustless suddenly pointed to the sky. And I can tear the sky. Deep in the sky, the dark abyss that stretches for several kilometers or even farther, seems to be able to swallow the whole world. Hearing this, Whitebeard was indifferent and his face did not change. He has been drifting in the sea for a long life. He has witnessed great winds and waves, and it is impossible for him to be frightened by this battle. It's a close call. Sengoku on the execution platform was relieved. He and Dustless had planned to fight, but they didn't expect Whitebeard to be suppressed by Dustless in the end. Oyaji, Fire Fist Ace's face was full of self-blame and guilt. Looking at the pirate corpses all over the ground, he felt ashamed. If it wasn't for him, none of this would have happened. Looking straight at Whitebeard, seeing that he was still confident, Dustless frowned slightly, and a hint of doubt flashed in his heart. Could it be that this old guy can awaken his devil fruit? Chapter 864. The so-called fruit awakening is actually a higher ability than the devil fruit. After awakening, there is no doubt that the strength will be different from the original. Whitebeard. Even if he can awaken Tremor fruit, Gura no Mi, it is a matter of course. The doubts were quickly relieved. Doflamingo and even some of the prison guards in Impel Down have awakened devil fruit. It would be strange if Whitebeard, who has been at the top for decades, did not awaken devil fruit. Boom boom boom. Dense cracks once again appeared in the space around Whitebeard. This time they were even more numerous than before, as if they were about to swallow the entire sky. The scene was exceptionally horrifying. Ka. In an instant the entire sky above the Marine headquarters collapsed and was destroyed like a broken mirror. Bastard, Whitebeard, this damn old guy. All the Marines quickly get down and grab the ground. Fleet Admiral Sengoku looked at the miserable sky, and his face changed greatly. He immediately shouted at the Marines who were fighting below, and his tone was full of panic. What is? Dustless frowned slightly and looked at Sengoku, but his face was full of fear and even fear. Not only him but Garp beside him was also doing his best. Break for me. Biting his teeth, Whitebeard's powerful roar resounded through the sky, and then the sky was filled with cracks, and the entire Marine headquarters was instantly dark. The sky that was shattered by Whitebeard was dark, and immediately a majestic gravity shot down from it. It turned out to be shattering the entire sky, swallowing the Marine headquarters with the help of the gravity in the universe. No wonder Sengoku is so nervous. Once swallowed, the Marine is equivalent to being wiped out. Dustless nodded slightly and noticed that the trembling island below had strangely left the sea and began to float up. But then again, I didn't expect the Tremor fruit to be so extraordinary. Looking up at the black sky, the gravity shot down from the hole was enough to tear everything apart. Many Marines had been crushed, but the pirates were safe. Obviously, Whitebeard deliberately controlled it. Even Dustless felt that his body was shrouded in a majestic gravity, and his arms had begun to distort and deform. To be able to die under this move, you can rest in peace. If it weren't for the fact that I had no other choice, I wouldn't have used such a dangerous move. You should be proud of yourself. Whitebeard sighed. He didn't have enough energy left. Clearly, this move had consumed a lot of his energy. You want to defeat me with such a superficial move? Looks like you haven't woken up yet, Whitebeard. Dustless sneered as he glanced over. Boundless chakra appeared around his body, containing boundless vitality. A huge Buddha statue appeared behind him. His body swept into the air, and the shadow of the Buddha covered the entire Marine headquarters. In an instant, the gravity of the broken black sky became much smaller. Would escape. Immortal technique, True Thousand Hands, puppet atop. The dense Buddhas were stacked together, forming an unprecedented Buddha. Its area was larger than the Marine headquarters, and its huge shape covered the black hole in the void in an instant. Gulp. Not only Sengoku, Garp and the others, but even Whitebeard himself looked at the giant Buddha floating in the sky in horror. Its body was so huge that Whitebeard suddenly felt that he was as small as a bug. Bang bang bang, as Wu Chen's voice fell, the huge Buddha statue's arms all struck out. The number of arms was dazzling. There were more than 10 million of them, and the power of each fist was beyond imagination. The darkness in the horizon was fragile like a thin film. It collapsed and was annihilated in an instant. The huge Buddha statue also disappeared. The void cleared up again. Is it hard to believe? Don't be surprised, it's actually that simple. Seeing Whitebeard looking at himself like a monster, Dustless said lightly. When he was fighting with Kagaya, what kind of battle had he not seen? The battle between Dustless and Kagaya is a battle based on the whole world. Now Whitebeard can only be said to be a showy and impractical technique, vulgar. It's far from over. His tired eyes erupted with cold light again. Whitebeard waved his left arm and the void shattered. A door-like crack appeared and he immediately stepped into it. This is shattering space, achieving the effect of crossing space? There is such an ability. It's really convenient. Dustless sighed, and immediately the space behind him burst, and then Dustless felt a pain in his chest, and the big sword wrapped in domineering aura penetrated his body. Like a ghost, Whitebeard came out silently, his face was ferocious, and the big sword in his hand turned, crushing Dustless's internal organs. Bastard Whitebeard, I must tear you to pieces. Sengoku burst out swearing and glared at Whitebeard. His killing intent soared. His fruit ability was launched and his whole body was covered with golden light. In broad daylight this guy killed a Marine Admiral. Don't think that I am cruel, this is the price you pay for killing so many of my sons. Pulling out the big sword, Dustless looked at the bloody hole and breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that Dustless would fall, but suddenly he felt a burning pain in his chest. Poochie. Exactly the same as Dustless, Whitebeard's internal organs were burned and destroyed, his whole body was penetrated, and even half of his heart was missing. How is this possible? Looking at the sudden change in shock, Whitebeard, whose eyes were blank, instinctively raised his head. What entered his eyes was Dustless, who was perfect and flawless. His body had recovered to its original size. Nothing is impossible. I have an immortal body in my Jubi body. Chapter 865. Crossing the sea, Whitebeard, who was over 70 years old, looked straight at Dustless, like a child who was new to the world. He didn't understand anything. His face was replaced by puzzlement and shock, and his eyes were wide open. Obviously he is just a human body. How can he have such a shameless skill like limb rebirth? This was King cheating? A bastard. Even if there are thousands of words in his heart, it is difficult to describe Whitebeard's complex mood at the moment. It is difficult to hide the bitterness in his heart. A person who should have died suddenly came back from the dead. Even with Whitebeard's mentality he felt absurd. Yaji. The overwhelming indignation resounded through the sky, and then countless pirates rushed towards Dustless. Their murderous eyes stared at Dustless, full of hatred. This group of people. Seeing this scene, Dustless frowned slightly and immediately sneered, "They deserve to be killed." Whitebeard's heart was destroyed and his face was full of anger. He wanted to drink Dustless's blood and eat his flesh. However, when Dustless's internal organs were crushed, this group of people was laughing. Outrageous. Don't come over. The powerful and advantageous burst spread like an explosion. The sound fell into the eyes of every pirate. Looking at Ace on the gallows, their eyes flashed with guilt. Whitebeard could feel his vitality rapidly fading. He wanted to save Ace but he couldn't. He could only say sorry. He can be buried with Ace but the others in the Whitebeard pirates can't die like this. Some people have their own families and even their wives and children. It is too selfish to force them to die together. Boom boom boom, just as he was about to order Whitebeard to retreat, intending to use his last strength to destroy the marine headquarters, above the ice that was frozen by Akiji, suddenly there was a vibration, and then countless ink dots appeared in the sky and suddenly it became dark. Whitebeard subconsciously raised his eyes. Not only him but all the pirates in Marlin including Dustless also did the same. This group of guys. Even if impelled down sinks to the bottom of the sea they won't die? Frowning, looking at the pirates falling from the sky and countless pirate figures, most of them were wearing impelled down prisoner uniforms, and their identity was obvious. Luffy. Garp's eyes were wide open and his mouth was wide open. He held his head and roared, looking very funny. Members of the Whitebeard pirates listen, attack, rescue Ace and destroy the marine. Even if his heart was destroyed, Whitebeard still roared with confidence. Not only that, but because of the appearance of this group of pirates, his whole face was flushed red and his decadence swept away. It was like the final radiance of the setting sun. Are you kidding me? How did all the prisoners in Impel Down come out? Also, what kind of organization was this? Red Hair Shanks, one of the Yonko 4 emperors, Jinbe who was stripped of his Shichibukai title and Blackbeard, Marshal D. Titch and the pirates who were imprisoned in the depths of Impel Down. This is bad. Idiot, if you have time to talk nonsense, it's better to retreat quickly so that you can save your life. Fighting with that group of monsters, 100 lives are not enough for them. The pirates who once resounded all over the world appeared one after another, and some marines with weak will fled. Fighting with this group of monsters is suicide. Blah. However, the group of deserters didn't run for long, the ground under their feet suddenly turned into hot magma, and all of them fell into it without knowing it and there was no more movement. The fiery red figure was reflected on the ground. It was a kainu who came down with his head bowed, Sakazuki. Those who leave without permission. Kill without mercy. Lowering the brim of his hat, trying to hide the cold light in his eyes, Akainu just left a hoarse sentence and leaned towards Dustless without turning his head. A group of soft marines was forced to fight the pirates again. Falling down like this? Are you deliberately looking down on us? The three admirals all approached Dustless. The person who spoke was Akiji, who was covered in ice. Falling from midair also means that they can't make appropriate movements to fight the enemy. This kind of risky move is tantamount to setting fire to themselves. The three admirals all looked at each other and looked at the figures falling from the sky, and they all used their unique skills. It's a pity to keep them alive. Meteor volcano. The fiery magma fist came out of Akainu's hand, like a meteor shower rising from the ground, and it rushed towards the pirates falling from the sky. Yasakani no Magatama. Ice Age. Kizaru and Akiji looked at each other, and the two of them were unwilling to fall behind, and they used their unique skills. For the first time, the three admirals joined forces to fight the enemy, and the power they exerted was unimaginable, and the colorful light covered the sky. In just a few seconds, 70% of the fallen pirates were killed. As for Dustless, he stood quietly in the same place in the name of dealing with Whitebeard, but in fact, he was looking at the destroyed marines. Except for some powerful pirates who can escape the joint attack of the three admirals, the others have no choice but to die. Then he sighed. I thought it was a strong appearance to save the world. It turned out to be a group death. Chapter 866. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. Although they fell from the sky, this way of invasion was unexpected, but the drawbacks were obvious. The pirates falling from the sky became the property of Akainu, Akiji, and Kizaru. Boom boom boom, the dense corpses fell and piled up into a mountain. Dustless tried to pick up his hand and count them, but he was a little dazzled. All kinds of corpses were as many as the stars in the sky. Some pirates were burned alive, and their miserable appearance was unbearable to look at. Some were beaten into a sieve by Kizaru's Yasakani no Magatama, and some were frozen into ice sculptures by Akiji, smashed into the ground and died. It's a pity? Red hair Shanks and Blackbeard became a shield for them. Looking as far as the eye could see, Shanks and Blackbeard, who were extremely powerful pirates, were not affected by the explosion and landed safely. The previous group of people were all cannon fodder. In the end, pirates are still ruthless. Ah, this battle formation is really scary. Kizaru touched the stubble on his chin. Although his tone was extremely lazy and frivolous, his cautiousness could be easily heard. 2 Yonko, 4 emperors, plus 2 former Shichibukai, and a large number of other pirates, the scales of victory seemed to be tilted towards pirates. Ace, I'm coming to save you. Looking around, Luffy immediately fell on Ace, who was on the execution table. Luffy cried with joy, his rubber body waved, his arms pulled the surrounding buildings tightly, and then he jumped out forcefully. We 4 admirals are here, kid. It's a bit unreasonable for you to ignore our existence like this. After the flash of light gathered in the void, Dustless slowly emerged from head to toe, blocking Luffy's way, and at the same time, a high-density flash condensed in his hand. Hey! A sound fell and the light beam whistled towards Luffy. Even if it was rubber, it was hit by this light beam that was enough to penetrate steel, and the end was miserable. Death's eyes. In the direction of the light beam, a similar repulsive force intervened horizontally, deflecting its trajectory, and it fell on the ground, causing a huge explosion. The devastated island was even more unbearable, and it was likely to tilt and collapse at any time. Even a character like you came out. His eyes moved and fell on the initiator Monster King Ivankov. After Dustless sneered, a faint light swept out of his palm again. Laser. The speed was extremely fast, and the light of destruction couldn't be captured. Even if he wanted to help Luffy, he could only watch the light beam go away until it finally swallowed Luffy. Boom boom boom. The sky, the sky, the sky, the sky, the sky and the sky, the sky and the sky, the sky, the sky and the sky, the sky, the sky and the sky, the sky, the sky, the sky T. Of, Isi, S's I zest. Luffy. Since Luffy, he teet, test says he's. S's, S. And he, and. Of. The moment Dustless defeated Luffy, he clearly sensed several sharp lights rushing toward him. It was obvious that they wanted to throw him into the sea and feed him to the fishes. Light speed kick. Dustless caught the trajectory of one of the black shadows and kicked it mercilessly. Boom boom boom. The fireball rose to the sky again and a huge hole appeared on the ground. A black shadow nimbly avoided the fire and stood aside, wiping his sweat. Do you think I'm an idiot? It's impossible to hit me again after I've been hit once, Ivankov said proudly after he escaped from the fire. However, before he could be arrogant for long, the light beam behind him swallowed him whole. Boom boom boom. Ivankov was severely injured. He knelt on the ground, covered in cuts and bruises. However, he was obviously stronger than Luffy, so he could still maintain his consciousness. What you said just now. I'll take it as a fart. Dustless glanced at Ivankov with sympathy and said contemptuously. Some people had used the same trick once, but it didn't work on Ivankov. However, some people could use the same trick many times, but it would work instantly. At the same time, with the reinforcement of the pirates in the city, the Whitebeard pirates were encouraged and approached Executioner as if they had been injected with chicken blood. It seems that we can only implement other plans. Looking down at the pirates below, Sengoku finally made a difficult decision and ordered the guards behind him, cut off the image Den Den Mushi immediately. The guards saluted and nodded, following Sengoku's instructions. After a while, the Den Den Mushi connected to all parts of the world was cut off, and Marlin's situation was unknown. This unprecedented riot seemed to be over. Execute the two of them now. Looking at Rayleigh and Fire Fist Ace, Sengoku ordered shamelessly. There was still half an hour before the execution time. Obviously, Sengoku wants to solve the two in advance and relieve the current crisis of the Marine. As long as Rayleigh and Fire Fist Ace die, everything will come to an end, and Whitebeard, who was seriously injured, is one step away from ascending to the sky. Chapter 867. Sengoku gritted his teeth and said at the same time, he called the executioner to come quickly and immediately execute Fire Fist Ace and Rayleigh. They are the origin of all right and wrong. As long as the culprit falls, this bloody war will also end. Sengoku. It's not appropriate to do this. Looking at Sengoku, Garp hesitated, his turbid eyes flashed with haze and his heart fell to the bottom. There is no doubt. With the passage of time, Fire Fist Ace might be able to escape in the end. But now that the execution is in advance, the previous slim hope is about to completely disappear. Whitebeard is just a dying man. He has been burned and pierced by Royce South. In a short time he will die. There is no need to execute him in advance. It will greatly reduce the prestige of the Marine. Garp said as he pointed at Whitebeard, who was killing people in the crowd. Anyone who had their heart incinerated would die. No need. Sengoku glanced at Garp and shook his head resolutely. He knew that Garp had a big idea in his heart and said indifferently, Garp, remember it clearly, you are a Marine, understand your position. Hearing this, Garp's face was stiff and his rough face could not help but dim. Get over here and end their sinful lives. Sengoku screamed and immediately ordered the executioner coldly. He was trembling with anger and his fists were clenched. The Marine corpses below were piled up like mountains. In the final analysis, it was all because of these two men. At the moment when the sharp spear pierced Ace and Rayleigh, a majestic and overbearing ripple swept through the entire Marlin. The executioner and as many as thousands of Marines, without exception, all of them were foaming at the mouth and were stunned by this unparalleled impact. Boom boom boom, many crumbling buildings crumbled and collapsed. There was clearly no substantial attack, but the places that were affected had cracks visible to the naked eye. Using Haushiko Haki to evolve into a substantial attack, Wuxia narrowed his eyes and nodded as he looked at the cracks under his feet and around him. His eyes immediately looked towards the instigator. A middle-aged man with red hair entered Wu Chen's sight. The 3 scars on his eyes were clearly visible, the sword in his hand was out of its sheath, and he looked at Sengoku coldly. This war is already over. There's no need to continue fighting. Otherwise the casualties of the 2 armies will only increase. Please give me face and let Ace and Senior Rayleigh go. His confident and loud voice spread throughout Marlin, causing everyone's eardrums to feel stuffy. The endless echoes lingered in their ears for a long time. Let them go? After a brief loss of consciousness, Sengoku laughed angrily. Looking around, the Marines' overall casualties were more than half, and the Marine headquarters was also torn into an unprecedented abyss by Whitebeard. If Fire Fist Ace and Rayleigh were released, there is no need to think about it, the Marine will inevitably become the target of the whole world. Bullshit. Sengoku's face was cold and after a thick sarcasm, he was merciless and decisive. Even this rude monologue was tantamount to directly slap Shank's face, deliberately embarrassing him. Because what Shanks said was unrealistic. How could the Marine just watch the Pirate King's son escape? Dream on. And if Fire Fist Ace was released so casually, the prestige that the Marine had established for many years would dissipate in an instant. Red hair? An indifferent voice came, and Red Hair raised his eyebrows. He always felt that the voice was familiar. His eyes turned, and what came into his eyes was dustless. I haven't seen you for so many years. You're much more domineering than before. His eyes narrowed, and a sinister light shot from his eyes, which could see through Red Hair Shanks's whole body. Looking carefully at Red Hair Shanks, he saw his domineering aura, and the sky was crushed by the majestic momentum, and a deep and narrow crack was particularly clear. I haven't seen you for many years. Sorry, it's really bad for me to see someone like you. Red Hair Shanks saw the appearance of Dustless, and his eyes were densely bloodshot. Touching his empty left arm a few years ago, this was thanks to Dustless in Fengche village. First, he used a trick to hit Red Hair pirates, and finally White Zetsu cut off Red Hair Shanks's left arm. The person behind the scenes was Dustless. But, aren't you too much? Dustless's smile disappeared, and he put on a cold expression. You're just a pirate, and you're telling the Marine what to do. Your hand is too long, Red Hair Shanks. Akainu also stepped forward, and the killing intent in his eyes was not hidden. He sneered and said, Give you face? Who do you think you are? Why don't you give me face and order your crew to give up resistance, and I promise that there will be no pain when I melt them. A pirate, but he was telling the Marine what to do, and he also said that he would give him face and release Fire Fist and Pluton. No matter how arrogant he was, he had to stop. Akiji also frowned. This guy was too arrogant. Rather than saying that he was giving face, it was more like a disguised order threat. A pirate ordered the Marine to release Fire Fist Ace and Dark King Rayleigh. No wonder the war was so angry. It seems that your face is not big enough. Touching his smooth chin, Dustless stared at Red Hair. The failure of the negotiation means that the war will continue. Chapter 868. Red Hair Shanks's face was blue. The two Yonko, 4 emperors, teamed up. The Marine was obviously at a disadvantage, and most of the pirates escaped from the Impel Down. There was no doubt that the Marine was at a disadvantage. Marines kept falling to the ground and immediately closed their eyes unwillingly. Sengoku will definitely not let go if we don't kill Fire Fist Ace and Rayleigh. Dustless shook his head. He understood Sengoku's approach. Although it was only a matter of time before Whitebeard fell, the protagonist Fire Fist Ace and Rayleigh must also die. Otherwise, a great victory would turn into a humiliation that would make everyone laugh at them. Big Fire. With a fierce light in his eyes, Akainu waved a powerful lava fist. The Marines around him asked for help, but Akainu was indifferent. In his eyes, there was only the head of Whitebeard and others. Clang clang clang, Red Hair Shanks rushed over, the sword in his hand swept out, and a faint cold light passed through the lava fist. Kacha. Kacha. The seemingly weak slash easily broke the ferocious lava fist. Not only that, but the slash also became more and more aggressive toward Akainu. Red Dog Tooth Lotus. A huge flaming dog formed from lava gushed out. It opened its big mouth full of sharp teeth, emitting a blazing hot air flow. It simply crushed the cold light that swept over. Kusanagi Cloud Sword. Kizaru compressed a big photon sword and also helped Akainu to attack Red Hair Shanks. As for Akiji, he was responsible for entangling other pirates. Looking at the bad situation, Sengoku has taken off the clothes on his upper body. Obviously he also did it himself. It seems that my opponent is still you? Whitebeard. He looked at Whitebeard helplessly. This old man was very powerful and had a strong vitality. His heart and internal organs had all suffered a destructive blow. He could be said to be just a bag of skin. Even so, the combat strength he displayed was enough to suppress a general and even severely injure a general. It was not difficult to see how peerless he was when he was in his heyday. Whitebeard's eyes were incomparable, and his whole body was full of the power to destroy the world. Even if he was full of holes, his eyes had never changed. Are you prepared to die? Then I shall fulfill your wish. His snow-white skin changed greatly in an instant. It was replaced by a deep black color. Not only his arms and limbs but his entire body was the same. The pitch-black appearance of his entire body was shocking to the eyes, causing both sides to be stunned. Whitebeard relied on the combination of Tremor Fruit and Haki to reach this level, and he seems to be able to fight Whitebeard with Haki alone. Rayleigh, the Nether King on the execution rack, said in a hoarse voice. Even though he was trying to hide his calmness, His shivering lips suggested his feelings at this moment. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was in a storm. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion in the air, the violent air scattered, the violent impact destroyed the marines and pirates around Dustless and Whitebeard fighting, they were affected by the wind. Ka. The ground under his feet was torn apart, and the slightest collision caused a shock beyond imagination. The tall building of the marine headquarters was slowly sinking into the ground. Not only did the power not decrease but it became stronger. Dustless stared at the hole in Whitebeard's chest. It was as if it did not exist and it did not affect Whitebeard's battle. If you don't do it, then I will bully you. His other arm was raised high, and his fist was covered with a white air shield. The destructive power of the condensation was despairing. Whitebeard sneered and immediately punched towards Dustless's head. The fist that was enough to burn the world was coming, and Sengoku, who was watching the battle between Whitebeard and Dustless, felt his heart jump to his throat. Dustless, on the other hand, did not change his face. His pupils just turned rapidly, replaced by lavender, and the ancient and mysterious Sharingan emerged. Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison. In the invisible world, Wu Chen's shadow galloped over, blocking in front of him like a shield. Boom. 20 or 30 meters away, the wall suddenly collapsed. Whitebeard was stunned and took back his fist in disbelief. It seemed that something had blocked the attack for Dustless. The power is so strong, but what's the use of it? The Sharingan in his left eye surged with a faint ripple, and the mysterious Magatama also trembled. The shadow that suffered Whitebeard's attack rushed out of thin air, and the strong and powerful fist greeted Whitebeard's face. Ka. The sound of bones shattering rang out in the air, followed by Whitebeard being blasted away. This inconceivable scene made everyone who saw it confused. Dustless didn't even do anything, and Whitebeard was inexplicably blown away. Only Rayleigh on the execution rack was indifferent because at the beginning he was also subdued by this mysterious means. Although he knew what was attacking him, he couldn't perceive it. He couldn't see it with his naked eye or observation haki, so he could only passively take a beating. Closing his eyes in despair, Rayleigh knew that Dustless could not be defeated. Some abilities could be restrained, but there was no way to deal with Dustless's strange trick. Chapter 869. Closing his eyes in despair, Rayleigh knew that Dustless couldn't be defeated. Some abilities could be restrained, but there was no way to deal with Dustless's strange trick. Not to mention a way to deal with it, he didn't even know the principle, and he was inexplicably beaten up without even seeing the shadow of the enemy. In contrast to Dustless's calm expression, Dustless's face was heavy and embarrassed at this moment in the ruins. Touching his bloody left face, the shock brought to him by Dustless made him feel no pain. Clenching his huge iron fist tightly, his heart hurt even more. This kind of feeling is really rare. As everyone knew, Whitebeard was known as an Iron Man. In front of anyone he would not show his weak side, but now he showed a rare hesitation and confusion. Dustless stood in front of Executioner only a few meters away, but from the beginning of the war until now, no one said that they could cross half a step. Whitebeard always had this kind of feeling in his mind, half a step away but thousands of mountains and rivers. At this moment the sky once again darkened abnormally and it was dim. Just a moment ago, it was a cloudless day, and now it was covered by dark clouds. Obviously someone deliberately did this. Everyone is really having fun. Dustless knew who the newcomer was just by listening to the sinister laughter of the signboard. He looked up and saw Blackbeard with his belly exposed. Of course there was also his crew following him. "My dear father, you seem to be working hard, do you need me to help you?" Between the words, there was a deep sense of rebelliousness. Blackbeard looked at Whitebeard with pity, and his eyes were shining. He didn't have this kind of complex human feeling. His eyes were filled with greed. Blackbeard had never been grateful to Whitebeard. Instead he was filled with hatred. It was Whitebeard who had hurt him so badly that he couldn't raise his head in front of the world government. The Rinnegan in his left eye twisted, and a new shadow condensed and swept toward Blackbeard. Bang bang bang. Boom boom boom. Dustless's shadow grabbed Blackbeard and beat him up. The shadow even used some ninjutsu. He hated this kind of person the most. Whitebeard liked to court death, but that was because he had the strength. He was able to compete with the legendary Pirate King Joel D. Roger, which indirectly showed how strong Whitebeard was. However, a rookie at Blackbeard's level who only relied on despicable means to raise his strength was hardly elegant. In the end he was still tacky. No matter how strong he was still a despicable person. He didn't have the mentality of an expert. Pooh. Blackbeard didn't notice it at all. He looked at his sunken chest in disbelief. His face was pale and the corner of his mouth overflowed with stinky blood. Bang! As the strength of the shadow increased, a cracking sound was emitted from Blackbeard's stomach. Soon after, he violently spat out a mouthful of blood and was mercilessly sent flying by Dustless's shadow. Not only him but even the crew of the Blackbeard pirates couldn't escape the nightmare. His companions plundered from Impel Down were ruthlessly attacked by Luan's tomb. Bang! 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 In an instant the entire Blackbeard pirates were attacked by Luan's tomb. They were unaware of it and could only be passively beaten. They used armament hockey to strengthen their bodies and at the same time released observation hockey to perceive the movements around them. Even so, they could only be passively beaten. With the naked eye and simple observation hockey, the probability of spying on the movements of Luan's tomb is 0. Bastard! Damn it! Who the hell did this? Blackbeard, who stood out of the ruins, roared furiously, using all his means to perceive the movements around him, but in the end he looked like he had seen a ghost. He couldn't detect who attacked them. All the people in Marlin were at a loss. At the end of the day you're just a mortal. If you want to spy on the mystery of the Tomb of Samsara, a border prison, you won't be able to reach that realm even if you spend your whole life. At the end of the day you're just a little pirate who plays tricks. The ruthless harsh sarcasm fell into his ears and immediately caused Blackbeard's anger. He looked up and saw that the person who mocked him was Dustless. You bastard! Blackbeard was angry but he didn't dare to say anything. He could only look at Dustless hatefully and look for the traces of the other members of the Blackbeard pirates. He was surprised to find that they were all in the ruins like him. A group of rice buckets. He cursed in a low voice. He was so focused on cursing his teammates that he completely forgot about the fact that Blackbeard had been killed in an instant. Damn bastard, how can he be so strong? Doflamingo, who was peeking at the battlefield in the distance, had a big change in his expression. He was green and white and his expression quickly changed back and forth. He naively thought that no matter how strong Dustless was, it was estimated that he was at most at the level of the Pirate King. Now it seems that his previous idea was too stupid. This god-level move that killed Whitebeard and all the members of the Blackbeard pirates made everyone shocked and their eyes almost popped out. The move that came and went without a trace just now was simply the natural enemy of human beings. Chapter 870. At this moment, Dustless was standing safely and defenseless. His whole body was full of flaws. A sneak attack may be easy, but the pirates around Dustless didn't dare to act rashly. They were all staring at each other and didn't dare to take a step forward. It's not that they are afraid of death, but the previous shocking and perfect attack beyond human imagination, they couldn't resist it at all. Whitebeard and Blackbeard, these energetic prehistoric creatures, were not even a match for one move. Their skinny beginner rookies were even more vulnerable. Therefore, all the pirates hesitated and looked at each other, and they could see the intention of retreat in each other's eyes. You don't have to be crazy with Whitebeard. He is trying to save Fire Fist Ace and you have no relationship with him. You have no obligation to save Fire Fist Ace. Put down your weapons and stop resisting, Marine can forgive your crimes. Sengoku took the opportunity to confuse the crowd, and his tone was full of endless charm, tempting all the pirates to put down their weapons. Although this was only his heart, it was extremely useful. Many pirates put down their weapons and squatted on the ground. When people are fragile, they always want to find a warm embrace to rely on. Now the same is true for pirates. The only pity is that the target is Sengoku, a smiling tiger. Execute him immediately. On the execution platform, there was a powerful low shout, and then two executioners with cold spears were seen close to Fire Fist Ace and Rayleigh. Seeing this scene, Garp's body moved uncontrollably, and he reflexively blocked in front of Fire Fist Ace, and his strong body was particularly strong. Grandpa, seeing this scene, Fire Fist Ace trembled and he blamed himself. He looked at the tall figure and tears came out of his eyes. This scene made those who heard it sad and those who saw it cry. Even Dustless, who had a heart of stone, couldn't help but sigh. Looking at Fire Fist Ace's ashamed face, he secretly sighed that the affairs of the world were impermanent. Garp longed for Ace to become a dragon among men and become the pillar of the marine. Unfortunately, things didn't go as he wished. Fire Fist Ace went astray and finally stepped into the wrong path. Now, Garp was stuck between a rock and a hard place. To be honest, Garp was the one who felt the most pain in this battle. Both sides were his own flesh and blood, and he couldn't bear to part with them. Yet he had to make a choice. It was easy to imagine just how much pain he felt. "Get out of my way, Garp!" Sengoku shouted angrily after his face twitched. The pirates didn't come, but Garp came. "Don't forget your position. You are a marine, not a pirate." "Huh?" Dustless frowned slightly and looked suspiciously at the ground. Through the perception of observation haki, he keenly smelled something swimming in the depths of the lava, like a fish in water, and not happy. Ka. The ground shook and burst into pieces, followed by the eruption of hot magma, which extended to more than 10 meters high in the sky. Immediately, in this fountain-like magma, a fiery red figure swept out of it. Immediately he jumped onto the execution table, his arm was boiling magma, and he went straight to Fire Fist Ace. This unexpected scene shocked all the Marines and pirates. Fire Fist Ace and Underworld King Rayleigh were both bound and could only watch helplessly as the lava fist approached. Boom boom boom, Garp was restrained by Sengoku, the flame fist destroyed the entire execution table, Fire Fist Ace and Dark King Rayleigh were swallowed by the magma, and it was self-evident what would happen to them. The wooden execution table collapsed and burned into nothingness in an instant, and Garp, Sengoku and others also fell to the ground. Fire Fist Ace and Dark King Rayleigh were scorched, and some of their organs had melted and they were dead. "Bastard, I'll kill you." Garp, who reacted, his eyes cracked, and his fist instantly turned black, containing strength no weaker than Whitebeard. When he was about to hit Akainu, a flash of light fell from the sky and easily subdued Garp. Boom boom boom, the ground collapsed and Dustless pressed Garp's head and said coldly, "You are a Marine and the road is his own choice. There is no need to feel guilty. Yes, you are a Marine hero, but they are the right-hand men of One Piece, and they even have a son who must be executed to purify the world's peace." Seeing Dustless subduing Garp, Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief. If this old guy was really instigated, the blow to the Marine would be no less than the Marine headquarters being sunk by Whitebeard. Even so, Garp stared fiercely at Akainu Sakazuki, his twisted body was like a large sea king, and his strength was beyond imagination. He was no weaker than Whitebeard. This old guy is hiding his strength. He's not much different from Whitebeard. Wu Chen's eyes were shining. He was sure that if this old guy was determined to kill Akainu, Akainu would definitely die. Ha! At the same time, seeing Dustless slip away, Blackbeard began to take the opportunity to make trouble again, with the same arrogant smile, but this time the target of the attack was not the Marine but Dustless. This idiot is still thinking about the tremor fruit. Fire Fist Ace was killed. At this moment, Whitebeard was on the verge of going berserk. Blackbeard was so blind that he wanted to touch Whitebeard's monkey butt. He was asking for trouble. A berserk Whitebeard could destroy the world. Chapter 871. Fire Fist Ace was killed. At this moment, Whitebeard was on the verge of going berserk. Blackbeard was so blind that he rushed to touch Whitebeard's ass. It was completely asking for trouble. Whitebeard could destroy the world if he went berserk. Reckless thing. Wu Chen's face was filled with disdain. He mocked Blackbeard for overestimating himself. With Old Tiger's remaining power, even if Whitebeard was riddled with holes, the destruction he caused was earth-shattering. Especially when Fire Fist Ace and King of Hell Rayleigh were mercilessly melted. Not even their bones were left. Ka, the void roared and the dense and narrow cracks were clearly visible. The impact of Whitebeard's fist was enough to easily break the world. The entire Marlin Island was crying as if begging for mercy. Boom boom boom. The members of the Blackbeard pirates were hit hard in an instant, and Blackbeard was even more miserable. He bore 80% of the impact of Whitebeard's fist. His whole body was bloody and his shoulder was smashed. Retreat. Looking at Whitebeard, whose eyes were filled with murderous intent as if he wanted to drag the whole world down with him, Blackbeard was so scared that he trembled. Then, without thinking, he fled without hesitation. Idiot, you think you can defeat Whitebeard with the ability of many fruits? Dream on. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He looked pitifully at Whitebeard who was running away frantically. Because this guy was too fat, he was swaying when he ran. It was quite funny, like a roly-poly toy. Dustless placed Shiryu beside him, so there was no need to care about him. Boom boom boom. The big sword in his hand hit the ground, and the whole island trembled. Looking up, it was Whitebeard. This war is over. Whitebeard pirates, all retreat. Although Whitebeard was extremely unwilling when he said these words, he had no choice but to admit that this war had already reached its end. There was no need to continue. They had already lost. Rayleigh and Fire Fist Ace are dead. Oyaji, kill the Marines and die with them. Yes, we must kill the Marines and avenge Ace. We have the advantage, don't be afraid. The surrounding noise and indignation fell into Whitebeard's ears. Although he was moved, he remained indifferent. No matter what, failure was a fact. Even if he stayed, he would not be able to salvage the situation. Instead, he would leave a ground full of corpses. If you're my father, then scram. The Whitebeard pirates looked at the back of Whitebeard, who was determined to die. After tears fell from their eyes, they finally chose to board the ship and leave. You want to run? In your dreams. Akainu snorted, and his body rose from the magma again. When he planned to pursue, Sengoku stopped him. There's no need to pursue. The purpose has been achieved. If we continue to fight, the Navy won't be able to bear it, and this island will collapse soon. Hurry up and organize the Navy to take refuge, Sengoku said with a pale face. Although Rayleigh and Fire Fist Ace were killed this time, including Whitebeard himself, the Marine headquarters, which was heavily damaged, is about to die because of this. If they continue to fight, the entire Marine is likely to be finished. Sengoku can't afford this kind of loss. Akainu, Kizaru, and Akiji nodded and quickly organized the Marine's retreat. If Marin is finished, the entire Marine will be destroyed. At that time, the great victory will be useless. It seems that I have to deal with you. Stretching lazily, Dustless stood up again and moved. His body ignored the existence of the law of gravity and floated in front of Whitebeard, staring at him. Due to the height difference, Whitebeard looked down at Dustless and whispered, "You are the strongest person I have ever seen. Roger is 1,000 miles away from you. There is no comparison at all." Dustless has a lot of dazzling abilities as well as hockey that has been tempered thousands of times. He even has an immortal body and has the ability to regenerate broken limbs. He can be called a perfect and invincible existence. He is invincible in all aspects. But for my disappointing sons, I must drag you down with me. At the end, Whitebeard's old tone was firm again. They are really disappointing, but the entire Marine won't do anything to them. Under the threat of death, these people scrambled to board the ship. The once united and invincible army's morale was in chaos. Don't you understand? Without your protection, they will be the prey of others sooner or later. There are too many people who want them to disappear. The Marine doesn't need to meddle in other people's business. There are too many people who hate the Whitebeard pirates. Whitebeard, the scary tiger, fell. It is only a matter of time before the entire Whitebeard pirates perishes. The most ironic thing is that in the future, there will be a pirate named Edward Weevil. He claimed to be Whitebeard's biological son, but in the end, he annihilated the entire Whitebeard pirates. Today I'll deal with you once and for all. I'll send you to hell to report back. The black sword extended from his hand. It looked ordinary, but it was condensed by yin-yang release. It can be imagined what will happen to a human body if it touches it. Chapter 872. Anything in the world that comes into contact with yin-yang release will collapse. This is the law of iron, and the world in front of him is even more so. As long as it comes into contact with yin-yang release, this god-level technique, everything in the world will collapse. You can die under this technique. You can rest in peace in the underworld. There was a black ripple in the nothingness. Wu Qin waved the black sword condensed by yin-yang escape, and slashed at Whitebeard. Whitebeard instinctively raised his sword to resist. Clang. After the roar fell, the sword in Whitebeard's hand began to slowly collapse. This? What the hell is this? The sword slowly peeled off as if it was bitten by an invisible monster, inexplicably dissipated. When it extended to his hand, he instinctively threw away the sword that had accompanied him for many years. In a few seconds, the sharp sword that could be called invincible disappeared from the world forever. Absolutely can't be cut by that black sword. Dustless's eyes flashed. Whitebeard was sure that the instigator was the black sword, and immediately he quickly pulled away from Dustless. Air shock. With a wave of his hands, two devastating shocks came head-on, and the destructive shock wave came head-on, and the ground was torn into a crack thicker than a person. Kemue. With a sneer, Dustless's pupils rotated sharply, and a strange vortex swallowed him. The majestic impact that wanted to crush Dustless quietly slipped by him and could not touch Dustless's body. Pucci, although Dustless was spared, the Marine headquarters Marin suffered a disaster and was torn apart by the power of despair and turned into two small islands. Bastard. Seeing this cruel scene, the world in front of Sengoku's eyes turned black, and he vomited blood directly. The Marine headquarters was destroyed and sunk by Whitebeard. How serious is the blow to the Marine? This is like mocking the justice of the sea that is about to fall. You made our fleet admiral angry, Whitebeard, the consequences are very serious. Looking at the furious Sengoku, Dustless teased Whitebeard. Sengoku? That despicable man. Whitebeard curled his lips and said disdainfully. He had always held a disdainful attitude towards the war kingdom of Buddha. He was the most cunning person in that era. In the marine, the only one who dares to fight is Garp. Let's stop with the kids. With a stern expression, Dustless's body floated, crossing layers of space and arriving in front of Whitebeard almost instantly. Just in time. With a loud laugh, Whitebeard gathered the power to destroy the sea in his right arm. He was a strength-type player, and fast movement was not his strong suit. A fist bigger than Dustless's head came crashing down. Divine might. His body seemed to be transparent as he ignored Dustless's attacks. He was unable to hit Dustless. This boring war is finally over. Dustless raised his gaze and stared at Whitebeard, who was full of flaws. His expression was cold and his eyes were deathly still. Immediately, the black greatsword in his hand whizzed out and a black light penetrated Whitebeard's body. Pucci. A conspicuous scar was left on Whitebeard's broad chest, and the invincible momentum that erupted from Whitebeard's body disappeared in an instant. Do you have any last words, Whitebeard? Whitebeard's body slowly collapsed, and all his flesh and blood turned into snow and drifted away. Seeing this scene, the greatsword in his hand that was completely condensed by yin-yang escape also lost its feeling. Last words. Is this a friendly service to the old man? Whitebeard laughed at himself. At this moment, most of his body had collapsed and only his upper body was left. For Garp, for Sengoku, I have never held any hatred. Everyone's position is different. Whitebeard has nothing to say about winning or losing. After all, he knows how strong Garp and Sengoku are. But if you meet that bastard Titch, you must help me kill him. For Blackbeard, this despicable and shameless villain, Whitebeard had a deep hatred in his soul. Without his betrayal, none of this would have happened. Everything that happened today was indirectly led by Blackbeard. However, without waiting for Dustless's answer, Whitebeard stepped into the gate of the underworld. The peerless powerhouse who used to dominate the sea in the past, now had no bones left. Titch? That guy Blackbeard. I don't need you to say that. He won't live long. Wu Qin, who was alone, muttered to himself in a low voice. Then he immediately left. Blackbeard would definitely die. Otherwise, it would be a waste of Shilyu of the ranged chess piece. Boom boom boom, suddenly there was a throbbing from the ground. Dustless was stunned and subconsciously looked down at the dark crack. It seems that this is the end. Under the ground, the boiling magma was flowing like a fire dragon, and it was constantly rising, and it was about to swallow the entire marine headquarters. This island called Marin II would soon be completely submerged. Fortunately, the surrounding marines retreated in time to avoid this monstrous disaster. Sengoku's face was complicated. For Whitebeard, he really couldn't hate him. The dead were gone and it was too small to hold a grudge. A group of marines were silently watching Marinadu gradually sinking to the bottom of the sea. Chapter 873. With the passage of time, the marine headquarters, Marin, gradually disappeared and completely sank into the deep sea, while Sengoku and other marines could only linger on battleships. A battle that should have been a great victory instantly changed. At least in Sengoku's nostrils, it was extremely stinky. The series of consequences brought about by the destruction of the marine headquarters is definitely no less than the fall of an admiral. Where are we going now? Kizaru asked Sengoku as he put out the cigarette in his hand. The marine headquarters sank, and the marine has become a stray dog in an instant. They must find a new place to recuperate. Hearing this, Sengoku sighed helplessly after a while. He felt unprecedented fatigue all over his body. Looking at the disappearing island in front of him, he felt that it was time for him to retire. Let's temporarily migrate to Mariehua. Sengoku's eyes glowed and immediately looked at the three admirals of the marine and said in a deep voice, "Soon I will retire from the position of fleet admiral. As for where to build the marine headquarters, it depends entirely on the choice of fleet admiral." Sengoku said seriously as he looked at the faces of Akainu, Kizaru, and Akiji. Obviously, the previous words were not a joke and Sengoku did not like to joke. This is bad. Thinking of the previous war, Sengoku's heart fell to the bottom. He recommended Akiji to be the next fleet admiral. In this war, although Akiji performed well, he was far worse than Akainu. Akainu personally executed Fire Fist Ace and Rayleigh, during which he also fought Red Hair Shanks. It can be said that he was the most dazzling one besides Dustless. On the other hand, Akiji had no achievements. Although he caught a lot of pirates, it was the kind of harmless. And inside the Akainu world government, most people recommended him to be the next fleet admiral. Sengoku didn't know who the winner was. Boom boom boom. At this moment, the marine headquarters that sank into the deep sea suddenly exploded, setting off a water column that reached a height of 20 or 30 meters. It doesn't seem right. Marinejois is completely composed of extinct volcanoes. How can it explode? Dustless said suspiciously. He was not interested in who the next fleet admiral was. Who can say for sure about that? Sengoku shook his head. Although he is also very strange, there are countless strange things in the world. There is a saying that things will go in the opposite direction when they reach an extreme. Only unexpected things will happen. Both Akiji and Akainu remained silent, and their eyes flashed with different colors from time to time. It is estimated that they took Dustless's words as wind in one ear and out the other, and they began to think about how to obtain the position of Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral. Boom boom boom. The explosion continued, and the powerful waves pushed the marine ships far away. Are you sure you want to step down from the position of Marshal, Sengoku? Dustless took a deep look at the marine headquarters that was shattered by the explosion. He lazily reclined on the couch. I suggest you don't have this idea for the time being. For now. What? Sengoku frowned and asked suspiciously. He always felt that these words had a different meaning. Both of them. After either of them becomes fleet admiral, they will force the other to leave. So there will be only one admiral left in the marine. How long do you think it will be before we perish? Dustless said faintly while pointing to Akainu and Akiji. The opposite characters of Akainu and Akiji are known to the world. After Akainu becomes fleet admiral, I am afraid that Akiji will have no right to speak in the marine and vice versa. When Akiji becomes fleet admiral, Akainu will have no right to speak. Hearing this, Sengoku's face suddenly solidified and he nodded stiffly. Indeed, as Dustless said, they are enemies. If it wasn't for Sengoku's suppression, maybe the two would have fought several times. His eyes flickered as he stared at Akainu and Akiji. After Akainu is promoted to fleet admiral, I am afraid that Akiji will leave the marine. When there is only one admiral left, the marine will inevitably be difficult to support. Finally, his eyes fell on Kizaru and his eyes flashed. You don't want to find Kizaru to be fleet admiral, do you? Dustless asked bluntly with a strange face. Why not? Don't underestimate Borsellino's talent. Sengoku did not hide his thoughts. Although he felt that it was not reliable, it was not impossible to give it a try. His character is not suitable to be fleet admiral, and I don't think he is interested in it. Looking at Borsellino's relaxed face, Dustless affirmed. Borsellino has always been uninterested in the position of fleet admiral. Whether it is pretentious or intentional, in short, he has always been very indifferent to the position of fleet admiral. How about that? I can't let you be fleet admiral. Dustless also shook his head when he heard this. He was not interested in the position of fleet admiral. It's better that you continue to be fleet admiral for the time being. But at present, the marine has suffered heavy losses. We can recruit a large number of troops from all over the world. We can reabsorb 2 marine admirals. At that time, no matter who is Akainu or Akiji, the overall strength of the marine will not be weakened. We will always have 4 admirals including me. Sengoku heard this and his eyes scattered. Looking at the decadent marine, he nodded heavily. It is indeed necessary to increase the strength of the marine. Chapter 874. After this battle, although Marine has smashed the Whitebeard pirates, the number 1 and number 2 characters Whitebeard and Firefist have been buried in the marine headquarters. According to the characteristics of pirates, the Whitebeard pirates will also collapse in the future and will be divided into scattered sand. But on the contrary, the marine headquarters has also been hit hard. Many Marlins have sunk and a large number of Marines have been injured and may retire, including Sengoku himself has to retire from the position of fleet admiral. In fact, Marine is not much better. As Dustless said, either Akainu or Akiji may drive each other away when they become fleet admiral. The position of admiral is bound to be vacant and must be replaced by new people. Otherwise, the pirates of all seas around the world are bound to challenge the authority of Marine again. You're right. After thinking for a while, Sengoku decided to take Dustless's suggestion. Dustless smiled slightly as this was expected. It is imperative to absorb elites from all over the world into Marine. This is unavoidable unless Sengoku wants to destroy Marine. With the end of the War of the Best, Marine ended with a great victory. Of course, they also lost a lot of Marine headquarters Marlins so that they had to go to Mariewa for a while. Although the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, are quite dissatisfied with this, the seriousness of the destruction of Marine headquarters is self-evident. Thinking of the merits of killing Whitebeard and Fire Fist Ace and Rayleigh, the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, are relieved. The merits outweigh the demerits. At this moment in Mariewa's office, there is a different kind of depression. I strongly object. Sengoku slammed the table and shouted at the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. At the beginning, Sengoku talked about a large-scale recruitment plan all over the world, and the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, readily agreed. Although the loss of Marine was not so serious, it has reached the point of breaking bones. It takes a lot of time to recruit on a large scale, so the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, came up with other strategies. This fat man, looking at the fat man on the bounty list, Dustless frowned. The guy in front of him was the pirate who cut off Z's arm in the past, Edward Weevil, with a bounty of 480 million berries. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, are now pulling him into the Shichibukai, and there is another person Dustless has seen before, and he took his ship to the Sabaody archipelago in East Blue. The King of Clowns, Bucky. It's Edward Weevil joining the Shichibukai is really Teacher's arm. He is the initiator. If we do this, it will be too much. Akiji couldn't bear to pull Z's broken arm into Shichibukai. This is too cruel to him. Z has retired, he is no longer the Marine Admiral of the past. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and Admiral of the 5 Elder Stars, Marlins, 5 Elder Stars. To the Gorosei. 2 Marine Pirates, 5. Sure? To him? Of the sea. That man. Senguf the Sensengufthi of the of. To the point, to the Sengoku. Sento the, of the to the 2, to the of to the 2. Sengoku's face was blue. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, were obviously determined to pull Edward Weevil into the Shichibukai. What is this, Bucky? His bounty is only 15 million berries. How can such a person join the Shichibukai? Kizaru frowned and asked. The so-called bounty is just a general conclusion of a pirate's strength. It can't be taken seriously. Glancing at Kizaru and looking at Bucky's funny nose, Dustless continued. He used to be Roger's crew. Like Shanks, he was Roger's trainee crew. I don't know why he hides his strength. One Piece's crew. Hearing this, Kizaru's eyes widened. He wiped his eyes and looked at Bucky. He didn't expect him to be so old. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, were silent. Apparently, they agreed with Dustless's statement. When he first met Bucky, Dustless felt that he was very strange or extraordinary. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, are not idiots. It's impossible for them to pull a clown into the Shichibukai. There must be a special reason. And the eyes of the blonde Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, shone. Gecko Moria's performance during the war was not satisfactory. We decided to deprive him of the title of Shichibukai and send someone to kill him immediately. He is useful, he can naturally be kept alive. If not. This is the essence of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. I'll leave it to you, Lois Nam. Sengoku's eyes were cast over. Dustless nodded immediately. It just so happened that he was going to the New World to grab territory. Killing Gecko Moria was a trivial matter. The Whitebeard pirates were destroyed. His territory was divided by most forces. The whole world was in a mess. Blackbeard took advantage of this period to plunder Whitebeard's legacy. It was as if he had the momentum to become one of the Yonko, 4 emperors. But these are small problems. Once Edward Weevil joins the Shichibukai, Z will probably leave the Marine or something worse will happen. Speaking of this, Dustless looked at Sengoku with deep meaning. He was Z's old comrade-in-arms for many years and knew Z's nature. Chapter 875. Dustless's words made everyone's expression stagnate, and they immediately bowed their heads and pondered, secretly thinking about the stakes, and finally came to an amazing conclusion. Admiral defecting, this is not a trivial matter. Seeing everyone's cautiousness, Dustless opened the skylight and spoke frankly. Edward Weevil must not be allowed to join Shichibukai. Biting his teeth, Sengoku stood up again and said for Z. Many outstanding generals and Marine were trained by Z. It's not fair to him. That man has devoted his life to Marine. We can't be so ruthless. The 3 admirals of Marine, as well as most of the vice admirals, including other grassroots officers, were almost all trained by Z. Now that he has outlived his usefulness, it is self-evident that it may cause such a big shock. Sengoku, hearing this, the Gorosei's face was gloomy, and he released a trace of his own momentum. The whole conference room suddenly heard the screams of ghosts, and he emphasized, "This? I don't want to repeat it a third time, don't irritate me." Ka ka ka. At the end of the sentence, the ground and the delicate glass, including the walls, were shaken with countless cracks. Sengoku's face flashed with a touch of unwillingness, but his clenched fist finally came down, and he sat down as if his soul had been taken away, and his face was full of guilt. The will of the Gorosei is above everything. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. In the end, Marine is just a subordinate department belonging to the world government. I am afraid that no one in the world can violate the will of the Gorosei. Edward Weevil and Bucky, the King of Clowns, joining Shichibukai is also imperative. About 7 days later, the news that Bucky and Edward Weevil joined Shichibukai, through the government's promotion, swept the world like a hurricane in a short period of time. Edward Weevil's bounty was 480 million berries, but Bucky's bounty was only 15 million berries, which inevitably aroused the suspicion of other pirates. Boom boom boom, there was a sudden explosion in Mariehua's harbor, and the violent vibration attracted the attention of other marines. By the time they arrived, about dozens of battleships had left the harbor. I said, "It's a sure thing that he left Marine." Sengoku even thought that doing ideological work could comfort Z naive. In a luxurious villa, Dustless was sleeping leisurely on the balcony. Hancock was feeding him grapes, Perona was massaging his legs, and the secretary Khalifa was standing in place like a javelin. Following Wu Chen's line of sight, there was a man with a sad face on the bow of the ship. It was the former Marine Admiral Z. What is his purpose for betraying Marine? In order to revenge, Edward Weevil doesn't have to leave Mariehua. Khalifa frowned. The two new members of Shichibukai, King of Clowns Bucky and Edward Weevil, are now in Mariehua. If they want revenge, they can directly find Edward Weevil. Z didn't betray the Marine betrayed him. Z is going to destroy the entire new world. Stretching his waist, Dustless instantly understood Z's intention. If he left safely, no one would bother him with his former status in Marine, but Z touched a taboo, power rock. An explosive comparable to ancient weapons, and its power is even comparable to ancient weapons. If the power rock is placed in 3 specific places in the new world, the power of the explosion is enough to destroy the new world. Come here. Hancock. His eyes suddenly turned and fell on Boa Hancock's plump body. Dustless's eyes flashed with covetousness. He hadn't moved for a long time, and his body had already begun to stiffen. You two go out. Waving his hand, Dustless suddenly issued an expulsion order to Perona and Khalifa. Why? Perona and Khalifa looked at each other and asked in unison. Looking at Hancock's red face, their faces flashed with dissatisfaction. Dustless obviously wants to leave Hancock alone. It's not that they are jealous, but this kind of inexplicable expulsion has to be explained. Why? Hearing this, Dustless touched his chin and smiled maliciously. Of course, it's to do things that are not suitable for children. If you two are willing to join, I don't care. Anyway, I'm very strong and I can regenerate organs. That kind of thing, hee, you know. Perona and Khalifa blushed when they heard this, and they glared at Dustless fiercely and hurriedly fled. Food and sex are human nature. What's so shameful about it? I wanted to pull them into a group and have a good time. Dustless rolled his eyes and was speechless. He immediately took Hancock into his arms, and the dry corner of his mouth met her red lips. He didn't think there was anything wrong with indulging once in a while. Life is to indulge in pleasure. About a few minutes later there was a sound of ecstasy, and it made people daydream. It wasn't until the sun set that Dustless reluctantly climbed out of Hancock's body. He planned to go back to his room and sleep, but he didn't expect an unexpected guest to visit, and it was a big person that Dustless had to meet. Chapter 876. The newcomer had a stocky build and a mohawk hairstyle. His muscles were as thick as a human's leg, and he was awe-inspiring even without being angry. Just a glance from him was enough to make people unable to resist. It is the former Marine Fleet Admiral Sky, the current Commander-in-Chief of the Navy, Sky. It's an honor to have you here, sit down. Dustless said politely to Sky Commander. Sky Commander didn't talk nonsense and simply sat on the sofa, showing his ability as a soldier, and went straight to the subject. Sengoku and Garp both submitted their resignation reports to me as if they had discussed it beforehand. Speaking of this, Sky Commander's voice paused, and after seeing Dustless's face as usual, he sighed and continued with a deep headache. There is only one Marine Fleet Admiral. Sakazuki and Kuzan are both candidates with good qualifications, and they represent two forces. Akiji has the support of Sengoku and other Marines, and Akainu has the support of world government officials. I'm afraid that Gorosei and Sky Commander will have a headache over who to choose. If it's not done well, it may cause a marine crisis, and it's not impossible for the huge marine to fall apart. It's better. Staring at Dustless, Sky Commander said his inner thoughts. The position of Fleet Admiral is given to you, whether it's Akiji, Akainu, or Borsellino, the entire marine will be convinced. For world peace and the balance of the marine, the task of Fleet Admiral falls on you. You are the oldest admiral, and Akainu and the others are not as good as you. Sky Commander's tone is full of hope. Dustless has countless benefits to sit in the position of Marine Fleet Admiral, and the strength of killing Whitebeard shocked the world. Do you think I look like a person who is a Fleet Admiral? Looking at Sky Commander's serious face, Dustless said the same thing as Sengoku. Dustless said, I can understand your mood, but I am a lazy person, and such a tiring position is not suitable for me. With that, Dustless looked at Chief Commander Kong. The latter's face, which was as rough as dead tree bark, was immediately replaced by disappointment, and his spirit was also rather dispirited. Dustless was indifferent when he saw this. He was thinking about the future of the world. The strength of the pirates had been weakened by him without limit. This War of the Best was actually a great purge launched with the help of Blackbeard and Whitebeard. Now it's time to clean up the navy, and in the future when he rules the world there will be less resistance. In fact, how to choose between Akainu and Akiji, I have a good plan. The light sentence was like the dawn of dawn. The disheartened Marshal Kong became spirited again and asked with great interest, I hope it's a good idea. This is very simple. Since they both have support, then let's have a fair and just battle. The winner will take the position of Fleet Admiral and the loser will obey unconditionally. Dustless looked straight into Commander Kong's eyes as he laid out his strategy. It's difficult for them to cooperate in the future. Commander Kong said with a little dissatisfaction, and his hope was lost. He thought what Dustless said was a wonderful plan, but it turned out to be such a bad idea. Some things are destined to be unchangeable. Even if we forcibly twist them together, it won't help. So it's better to let the two of them compete. This is the best strategy. Dustless smiled and said, it's better to ask Sakazuki and Akainu. I think they will agree with this approach. This is the most effective way. After a moment of silence, Commander Kong was speechless. His eyes were shining and he was a little moved. Although he knew that this was a bad idea, it was a good strategy. Just like what Wuxia said, the winner was king. In the world where the strong are respected, this is the most appropriate way. Since that's the case, I'll arrange an island in a few days and let them decide the victor. His cold eyes emitted a threatening aura as Commander Kong made up his mind. No matter how Sengoku tried to persuade him, he still chose to abdicate. The position of Fleet Admiral was extremely busy. Did that Z guy take away something incredible? Dustless changed the topic to Z. Shortly after Z left, Akiji and Kizaru chased after him. Apparently they took something extraordinary. He took away the information of the moving rock, so I sent Kuzan and Borsellino to chase after him to prevent him from doing anything stupid. General Kong couldn't help but say. After all, Z was his former subordinate. After chatting for a while, Commander Kong returned slowly. Master, it's late, you should go to bed. At this moment, a beautiful voice suddenly came. The maid Perona, who was responsible for rubbing his legs, said, Sleep? Will you accompany me? Dustless teased and returned to his casual appearance, which made Perona stomp her feet. Walking to the window, Wuxia looked at the back of General Kong with deep meaning. Wuxia keenly smelled a different meaning. This was definitely not as simple as the Power Rock. Even if it's really the Power Rock, it's not necessary to send two admirals. The Whitebeard pirates collapsed and war broke out everywhere. Now when they need manpower, Akiji and Kizaru inexplicably left, indicating that there is a problem. Especially the unnatural way he talked about Z, Wuxia saw it deeply in his eyes. Usually, Commander Kong was like an Iron Man, he rarely showed any emotional fluctuations. Chapter 877. Although Commander Kong's concealment was extremely clever, he still couldn't escape Dustless's insight. Especially Commander Kong, he couldn't escape Dustless's observation. It's strange. Hancock suddenly said. What's the matter? Dustless looked up and immediately frowned. Suddenly there was a burst of hurried footsteps downstairs. Dustless went to the bed and subconsciously looked down. Late at night, the port that was closed, countless battleships set out together. It seems that something terrible happened. The Marines who boarded the ship at the port seemed to be ordinary goods. Dustless, who was in a good situation, caught Garp's figure. He also joined this group of people, and the direction of departure was the same as Akiji and Akainu. Without exception, the purpose is to find Z's trace. Marine's hero Garp also inexplicably left. His whereabouts are unknown. Hancock said. Dustless's sleepiness disappeared when he heard that. His thoughts turned rapidly in his mind, thinking about the people who had contact with Z, but he didn't realize that something was wrong. That man joined forces with the pirates? White Zetsu suddenly came out of the ground and Califa and Pero were shocked. Hancock, who often comes in contact with White Zetsu, didn't change her expression. She was used to Dustless's mystery, or Hancock has long been numb to it. Doesn't Admiral Z hate pirates very much? How could he join forces with pirates? Califa's eyes flashed with suspicion. Pirates destroyed Z's life. Even if he cooperated with someone, he wouldn't fall to the point of being with pirates. I have also heard some rumors about Admiral Z. Even if he cooperates with a person like the young master, it is absolutely impossible for him to be in the same boat as a pirate. Pero's finger touched her smooth chin, and she also deeply agreed with him. You too. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the two women. Although he was despicable, he was sincere to his own people. When it came to these two, he was so unbearable. Nothing is impossible in the face of absolute benefits. Dustless's thumb tapped on the table rhythmically as he pondered for a long time. His face showed endless wisdom as he said in a deep voice, I know Z too well. He won't lower himself to cooperate with pirates. But when they come together he can use them. In any case they were just using him. It had nothing to do with cooperation. Who is the target of the cooperation? Red Hair Shanks or 100 Beast Kaido? No matter how weak the person he picked is, he should at least be a general, right? Wu Chen's eyes were as bright as stars as he asked expectantly. Dustless, Sama, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed this time. 100 Beast Kaido is indeed Z's partner, but there are others. White Zetsu said in disbelief. It's not just 100 Beast Kaido. Everyone who has had a grudge with you in the past seems to have had something to do with Z. White Zetsu said with an ugly face. Z, that guy. Did he expect this day to come and premeditate it in advance? Dustless's face was slightly dignified. Edward Weevil just joined the Shichibukai in the last few days. So many allies appeared overnight. Obviously it's unusual. Perhaps many years ago, he had seen the decay of the Marine and had already made plans to set up another Shichibukai. This time, Edward Weevil joined the Shichibukai and detonated the powder keg. Master, are you not going to stop him? Admiral Z wants to use the kinetic rock to destroy the Sea of the New World. Master, you are a Marine, you can't just turn a blind eye to it. Hancock asked curiously while looking at Dustless. Hearing this, Wu Chen just smiled. Of course, he wouldn't allow Z to continue his nonsense. It was impossible for Z to destroy the New World. But this time, he really intended to turn a blind eye and pretend that he didn't know anything. Although I don't know for what purpose that old guy Sengoku actually hid this mission from me. Speaking of this, Dustless's face was obviously gloomy. He sneered and said, This time I will wait for that old guy Sengoku to beg me. The three women looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They sighed helplessly. Their young master is sometimes so capricious and childish. When he is in a good mood he can play with you. When he is in a bad mood he will suffer. The next morning the sun was bright and there were no clouds in the sky. After the war in the Marine headquarters, Dustless became unemployed again. He was idle at home all day and once again restored his previous identity. Despite this he lived a leisurely life all day. Master, there is a Shichibukai coming to visit. Reading the newspaper on the sofa, he looked up at Hancock and asked, Shichibukai? Hawkeye and Doflamingo are here. I remember they all left Mariehua. I'm not familiar with other Shichibukai. Hancock snickered and her beautiful eyes flashed cunningly. Obviously Wu Chen guessed wrong. Young master, we have met before. Seeing that Dustless couldn't remember, Hancock handed over an envelope. An unexpected name suddenly floated into his eyes. The confusion in Dustless's eyes also converged. At present he was indeed in Mariehua. Chapter 878. At present, there are only two pirates who have been given the title of Shichibukai, in Mariehua. One is King of Clowns Bucky, and the other is Edward Weevil. Dustless barely has an impression of Bucky. Taking the envelope handed by Hancock, it is more appropriate to say that it is a photo. The character is also quite funny with a big red nose, which is particularly conspicuous and eye-catching. Naturally, it is the 7 warlords of the sea, great god Bucky. It's strange that he would come to me. Dustless muttered to himself in surprise. It's strange that the young master knows him, Hancock did not understand. In her impression, Dustless does not know such a small character. The people who can contact Dustless are at least at the level of Vice Admiral. Tell him to come in. Wuxia waved his hand and said decisively. Hancock heard the words and bowed slightly to Dustless, and then walked away with elegant steps. Pulling an inexplicable person is dangerous for ordinary people, but it is harmless for Dustless. As long as Bucky dares to rebel, it is estimated that he will end up like Whitebeard. After about 10 minutes, there was a burst of messy footsteps in the quiet corridor, and Dustless, who closed his eyes to cultivate, revealed his clear eyes. Under this keen and indifferent eyes, just a glimpse, the secrets hidden in the heart can be revealed to the world. Then a few seconds later, Bucky and Hancock, who were dressed ridiculously, entered Dustless's eyes, and they looked obviously much older than before. Sit down, you have become one of the great pirates of the 7 warlords of the sea. Congratulations. Dustless showed a polite smile, giving people a gentle feeling at first. Bucky nodded and sat down naturally, and immediately felt that the sofa under his buttocks was quite soft, and the first impression he gave was as childish as a child. What are you doing here? Dustless asked when Bucky was silent. Immediately, he looked at him deeply and his face was indifferent. You are not looking for me to talk about the old days? Of course not, I'm also a busy man. Bucky shook his head like a rattledrum. After pretending to think for a while, he said, I'm here to talk business. Business? Hearing this, Dustless's face became cold and his tone was a little cold. You, a pirate, want to do business with a Marine Admiral? With all due respect, this joke is not funny at all. It's extremely vulgar. Dustless did not hesitate to mock and ridicule. He was this kind of person. One second he could call you brother and the next second he could fall out with you. Besides, you're a hardcore fan of Red Hair Shanks. We once interned on One Piece Roger's ship and my relationship with him is well known, especially when I recently killed Fire Fist Ace and Nether King Rayleigh. Buggy looked stiff. He didn't expect Dustless to know about the implementation of the Roger pirates. That was 10 or 20 years ago. Now, I have already parted ways with Shanks and we are all independent kings. Buggy said in a very positive tone. I hope so. A Shichibukai colluding with Jianghu for emperors is not a small crime. Say what you want. After staring at Bucky's eyes for a long time, Dustless's tone was a little curious. He reluctantly accepted Bucky's words. He was more interested in the business in Bucky's mouth. I hope it's not the kind of bad business involving Bailey. Otherwise, my hands will not listen to me. Dustless looked at Bucky with a deep look and added a threatening sentence. The former Admiral Z defected from the Marine, and he still has something in his hands. Bucky stood up and said to Dustless. He thought that Dustless would be surprised, but his performance was dull, and there was no extra expression on his face. That's all you want to say? Dustless asked quietly. His tone was like a machine and there was no joy, anger, sadness, or joy. But Hancock, who was familiar with Dustless's nature, knew that this was the precursor of Dustless's anger. Without a reasonable explanation, they will face a hurricane of up to 100 degrees. It's far more than that. Bucky, who seemed to realize that Dustless was wrong, hurriedly said, I mean the specific pirates who cooperated with Z. See the guest out. Glancing at Hancock, Dustless said very uninterestedly. White Zetsu's clones are all over the world, and it's only a matter of time before they know who Z is working with. Please. Hancock mercilessly gestured to Buggy to leave, indicating that he could leave now. That I haven't. Please don't force me to use force. Seeing that Bucky was still so insensible, Hancock said bluntly. Hearing this, Bucky saw Dustless taking a nap on the sofa and could only leave in disappointment. The price of angering Dustless, he couldn't afford it. Not only him, but I'm afraid that few people in this world can bear it. In short, Bucky didn't want to lose his life here. After a short while, Wuxia opened his eyes, and an extremely awe-inspiring sheen flashed through his eyes. Of course, there was also a wisp of unexpected surprise. Really, I can't figure out if the Gorosei are getting worse and worse. They even found this guy to be a Shichibukai. No matter how many pirates there are, they won't find such a person. Hancock said after coming back. Idiot, don't underestimate him. He was deliberately pretending for me to see. There is a deeper meaning. After a short thought, Dustless understood Bucky's risky move. Chapter 879. Hancock tilted her head and couldn't think of anything for a long time. He's acting too normal. At this moment, a melodious voice suddenly interrupted. Looking up, it's Dustless's secretary Khalifa. You're right. Wuxia gently nodded and said softly. What's wrong with acting normal? I remember that Buggy had seen the young master before, so it's normal to act familiar. Hancock said. That's not normal. Standing up, Dustless looked at the distant sea. His lips were lightly opened, and his eyes were shining with a ray of light. He said, it's not so much that it's too normal, it's better to say that he's fearless. A pirate with a bounty of 15 million berries in the face of a marine admiral can calmly deal with him. This is the most evil thing. Even if he has the halo of Shichibukai, it's not scientific. After all, this is a world where the strong are respected, and any identity is useless. Especially Dustless, who has never played according to common sense, the halo of Shichibukai has a negligible constraint on him. What's the purpose of that old boy? Looking down at the delicate floor, Dustless thought. Dustless-sama. A familiar voice came, and in the warm villa, a figure appeared out of thin air. What's the matter, White Zetsu? Without turning his head, Dustless stood with his hands behind his back, staring at the sea in front of him and asked calmly. Akiji and Kizaru went to crusade against Z, but they were beaten back by him. With a smile on his face, White Zetsu said with a sense of schadenfreude. Of course, the people responsible for repelling Kizaru and Akiji in addition to Z, were 100 Beast Kaido and other big and small pirates. White Zetsu then added another sentence. It won't take long for Sengoku to come and beg me. Coincidentally, Dustless's face also had a smile. This scene, as well as the conversation between the two, caused Hancock and Khalifa to roll their eyes. People who don't know the situation will definitely think that Dustless is a pirate. One is one of the Yonko, Kaido the Beast, and the other is a former marine admiral. Although he is old and weak, his strength is still good. In short, everyone who had a grudge with Dustless existed. But most of these people were used by Z, including Kaido. I don't know why, but this time Z defected to the marine. Sengoku didn't tell Wuxia in detail, just a few words perfunctorily. In this case, Dustless can only sit still and wait for Sengoku to beg him. Somewhere on an island in the New World, a large number of pirates and marine battleships gathered. This incredible scene attracted the curiosity of all the pirates passing by, but after seeing the flag on the pirate ship, they all slipped away. Only one pirate in the world dared to use that unique flag, 100 Beast Kaido. The nearby marine battleships belonged to Z's side. Hurry up and tell me the whereabouts of the moving rock, or I will kill you at any time, Admiral Z. Oh no, Mr. Admiral. Now you are just a stray dog who betrayed the marine. A very harsh and arrogant tone sounded, causing the marines to glare at him. A strong man with a height of several meters roared. The hot sound waves had an impact, and when it fell into the ears of humans, they would be dizzy and temporarily deaf. This man is the captain of the Kaido pirates, 100 Beast Kaido. It's useless to give it to you. Sengoku has already sent Garp to guard the island where the moving rock is located. Garp is not easy to deal with. Z with glasses said calmly. He just looked down at the map of the New World. Kaido was directly ignored. Any pirate he looked at would feel dirty. As Dustless guessed, Z was temporarily using Kaido, using the moving rock as bait to lure Kaido. Marine hero, Garp? Kaido nodded and said, that old man is here, I really need to be careful. Although I am not afraid of him, I can't beat him. Kaido's tone had a bit of a headache. In his early years he was lucky enough to fight against Garp. Perhaps because of his age, his strength has regressed, but even so, his strength was enough to suppress an admiral like Akainu. It's good that you know. Z glanced at Kaido and sneered in his heart. In fact, he already had the motion rock in his hand, but he didn't take it out. He just wanted to keep Kaido in suspense so that he would be more obedient and cooperate with him. Z knew the nature of the marine. Once he gave him the moving rock, he was afraid that they would immediately turn hostile and even attack him. The place where the moving rock is stored is here. As long as you capture it, you can get the moving rock. You can also rely on it to defeat Royce. Z tempted. Pointing at the 3 islands on the map, he said with certainty. In fact, it's not a place where the moving rock is stored. As long as they are detonated, the New World will completely collapse. Chapter 880. Who is the enemy he hates the most? Who was it before? There is no doubt that it was Dustless. His hatred with Dustless was too high. However, with the sudden rise of Dustless became the champion. Speaking of Dustless, 100 Beast Kaido gritted his teeth. His whole body was like a powder keg that could explode at any time. Stupid, no wonder you can't beat that man. Z quietly glanced at 100 Beast Kaido and sneered in his heart. Although these big pirates were a little smart, they were very straightforward and easily controlled by their emotions. It's easier to control them. For example, right now he just used the power rock to lure Kaido, who was blinded by hatred. After about half an hour, the two finished their discussion. The general idea was to grab the power rock and then 100 Beast Kaido would find Dustless to settle accounts. In the past, when he fought with Dustless, they both won and lost, but after the opponent changed to Dustless, his pirates were crushed by Dustless one after another. Since conventional means are ineffective, he can only use unconventional means. Mariehua. In the gloomy basement, a vague outline could be seen. Dustless, Sama is really going to do this? This could lead to the collapse of the world. White Zetsu was worried. His tone carried a sense of groundless worry. You are just a character created by me, how can you be so sentimental? Dustless glanced at White Zetsu and continued, that bastard Doflamingo is not reliable. Once Caesar finishes building Pluton, he will disappear. Now the only reliable subordinates are Hawkeye and Green Pepper. Tap. Tap. There was a slight fluctuation on the ground, and a cold figure came out of the darkness. Indeed, as I just said, I intend to use the identity of Uchiha Madara to destroy 100 Beast Kaido and then replace him as one of the new Yonko. Then I will destroy Akagami, Red Hair, and Big Ama, unify all the pirates, and finally destroy the world government and the Revolutionary Army. Out of trust, Dustless spoke of his plan. It was something that would happen in the next 2 or 3 years. He intended to put an end to his travels in this world. His long life would never decay. The world where pirates ran rampant in front of him was only the second stop in his life. The endless universe was his journey. In the blink of an eye, 15 or 16 years have passed. It's time to end things here. Dustless said emotionally as he stretched his body. Unknowingly, 15 or 16 years had passed, and his temperament had gradually been polished. What should happen would happen. There was a limit to wasting one's time. Unify the forces of pirates and destroy the world government and the marine, including the Revolutionary Army. Is it not enough to rely on pirates alone? White Zetsu doubted. The world government had been accumulating for more than 800 years, and no one knew how much they had. However, the fact that they could stand for less than 800 years explained everything. So what? Don't we still have ancient weapons? With a mysterious smile, Dustless calmly said, even if ancient weapons are not enough, there is still me. Hearing this, White Zetsu was silent. Just like Dustless said, even if all the previous plans collapsed, there was no one in this world who wanted to surpass Dustless. At the same time, Uchiha Madara also opened his eyes. Instead of killing that guy, it's better to turn him into an animal path. Red Hair Shanks into one of the 6 paths. Big Mom and Blackbeard. Looking at the disappearing back of Uchiha Madara, Dustless whispered. Staring at the disappearing figures of Dustless and Uchiha Madara, White Zetsu felt a chill in his heart. I'm afraid that it won't be long before 100 Beast Kaido falls into the animal path. Admiral Z, who teamed up with him, won't be spared either. At this moment, on the island where 100 Beast Kaido and Z stopped. *CK, this is really strange. Why is my right eye twitching all of a sudden? Under the blazing sun, 100 Beast Kaido hid under the shade of a tree and drank liquor. He was very irritable, his whole body was uncomfortable and he couldn't help but roar. Hearing this, Z only looked at him with pity and continued to think of a plan. In fact, his heart was also strangely at a loss. He couldn't tell what kind of feeling it was, so he instinctively treated it as an illusion and laughed it off. The ability to choose a graveyard is really bad. Uchiha Madara, who was controlled by Dustless, looked down at the distant island, and his eyes flashed with a cold light as he casually stood on the sea. The island in front of him was barren, abandoned for many years, and was temporarily chosen as a base camp by Z and 100 Beast Kaido. Disappear right here. Mariehua's Dustless whispered, and the controlled Tendo Uchiha Madara stepped on the sea and immediately headed for the island, gradually disappearing. Chapter 881. Uchiha Madara walked forward, and with every step he took, ripples appeared on the surface of the water, and immediately disappeared as he walked towards the island. With his dojutsu reaching this level, he can completely ignore the distance between him and Madara. It's strange, Gugu Kaido, who was gulping down the liquor, was puzzled. He had never felt such a sense of danger before. He couldn't help but feel irritable, as if a boulder was pressing down on his chest. What are you afraid of? Don't forget, this island is guarded by our subordinates. Z glanced at Kaido with dissatisfaction. The entire island is as strong as a fortress. There is no need to worry. Once the periphery is attacked, they will be notified immediately. There is no need to worry at all. Your so-called plan needs to be carried out at least a little faster. Kaido's face was full of killing intent. Every day in his dreams, he would even dream of Dustless's annoying face, always despising him with a look of contempt. I have time to cooperate with you too, and I don't want to waste my time in vain. Damn Marine and that Lewis South, I must tear them to pieces. A tall man with a twisted face came up and looked up. It was Gecko Moria with a pale face and dressed like a bat. In the War of the Best, he was almost killed by the pacifists and was finally removed from the Shichibukai. Before that, his terrifying three-masted ship was attacked by Dustless's order. For Dustless and the Marine, Gecko Moria is extremely hostile. It doesn't matter. You just became a stray dog again. With a contemptuous smile on his face, Kaido was disdainful of this loser. If it wasn't for Z, maybe he would have already destroyed this cockroach. Everyone's enemy is the Marine Lewis South. Everything is to deal with him. As long as we take the power rock, we can destroy him. Z smiled, his voice revealed a touch of cunning. Since the moment Edward Weevil joined the Shichibukai, he was completely desperate for the Marine, and even his disappointment turned into hatred. Hearing this, Gecko Moria could only suppress his hatred. Kaido also had a deep hatred for him. More than 10 years ago, it was 100 Beast Kaido who destroyed his pirates. It doesn't seem appropriate for all of you to talk about me like that. As soon as the voice fell, the black shadow pounced rapidly, closing in almost instantly. Fire style, grand fire annihilation. Boundless flames swept over with overflowing momentum. Because the flames were burning too fiercely, the entire horizon was dyed a deep red. It was a scene of doomsday. You can't hide. This sudden turn of events caused the expressions of the three of them to change drastically. Immediately they cried out in a low voice. Armament Haki hardening. 100 Beast Kaido, as one of the Yonko 4 emperors, naturally uses armament Haki. Z is no exception. He is famous for his armament Haki and is called Black Wrist Z. Although Gecko Moria is average, he barely understands some armament Haki. The scourge whizzed past, but the three of them did not suffer any damage. Only Moonlight Moria suffered some burns, but it was not a big deal. Not bad. Against the backdrop of the flames, a middle-aged man in crimson armor floated into view. Are you that Uchiha Madara? Z was surprised. Uchiha Madara's name is known all over the world. 100 Beast Kaido and Gecko Moria looked at each other and frowned. The two of them subconsciously looked away. After a while, Kaido's old face turned green and burst out, Bastard, what did you do to my subordinates? At a glance, Kaido's Devil Fruit Army has fallen to the ground foaming at the mouth. Don't get involved in Sama's business. Dustless, who was controlling Uchiha Madara in Mariehua, said indifferently. The so-called Devil Fruit Army is just a group of rookies that can be easily solved by ordinary genjutsu. Kids fighting? Don't think that you can do whatever you want with a bounty of 500 million berries. You are still far from it. Gecko Moria's huge body took a step forward and said unkindly. Oh yes, really, it's been so long, my memory seems to be a little bad. Tendo Uchiha Madara rubbed his head and immediately glanced at Gecko Moria with his cold eyes. His contemptuous eyes were full of sympathy and pity, as if he was looking at an insect. In fact, you are also a child. It's a blessing and a tragedy that you can stand here. Go to hell, garbage. His arrogant ridicule suddenly ignited Gecko Moria and the powder keg. Without waiting for him to speak more, the sky suddenly became dark, and a group of red cylindrical wood fell from the sky. What the hell is this? Gecko Moria shouted in panic with a touch of fear in his tone. Senjutsu, Bright God Gate. As Tendo Uchiha Madara's voice fell, Gecko Moria was suddenly suppressed. Boom. The earth trembled and smoke splashed. Gecko Moria was brutally obliterated. A sharp scream could be heard, and there were even broken arms and crushed internal organs. Next is the two of you, looking at 100 Beast Kaido and Z. Tendo Uchiha Madara and Dustless, who was far away in Mariehua, smiled like a cat playing with a mouse. Chapter 882. 100 Beast Kaido and Admiral Z's faces were extremely ugly. They looked at the mahogany group that was almost piled up into a mountain, and they knew that Gecko Moria couldn't escape. If it were anyone else, they would have been crushed by this unstoppable force. Bastard, it hurts. Ah! In the smoke and dust, a painful scream awakened the sluggish Z and 100 Beast Kaido, and the two looked in the direction of Gecko Moria. This old boy's vitality is strong enough. Far away in Mariehua, the humans in this world seem to grow up eating hormones. Obviously, they are just simple humans, but some people have bodies no less than Giant Clan. Their vitality is also surprisingly strong, and they are extremely resistant to beatings. At this moment, Gecko Moria was so miserable that he couldn't bear to look directly at him. His whole body was covered in blood. Perhaps because he dodged quickly, only one of his arms was suppressed by the bright god gate. Looking closely, his arm was already bloody, and his abdomen was no exception. There was an obvious depression. Apparently he was also hit by the bright god gate. What are you two standing there for? Come and save me, don't forget that we are allies. Seeing Z and 100 Beast Kaido looking at him coldly, Gecko Moria screamed. Now is the time to show the friendship of allies. This guy is so stupid that it's cute. Dustless and Mariehua couldn't help but feel ridiculous. Uchiha Madara, who was controlling Tendo, also whispered, they turned a deaf ear to you because they think you have no value. In other words, they don't need you anymore. The world where the strong is respected pays attention to the law of the jungle. People like Gecko Moria being abandoned is normal. He was crippled by Uchiha Madara and will definitely become a burden. Next, a more melodramatic scene directly made Gecko Moria faint. Are you interested in joining us? In the future, there will definitely be a place for you in this world. Z's tone was full of endless magic, irresistible. The object of temptation was Uchiha Madara. Joining you will give you a place? What will happen if I don't join you? Will I be killed? Uchiha Madara didn't answer and asked with sarcasm. Brat, don't be ungrateful. The grumpy 100 Beast Kaido roared, it's your honor to drag you into the water. The 500 million pirates that died in my hands are no worse than you. You better know your place. Pucci. He cut off his own arm to escape. At the same time, Gecko Moria came out of the mahogany group and stared murderously at Kaido and Z. He seemed to be hesitating about something and his fist-sized pupils were flickering. In the end, his eyes fell on Uchiha Madara. Picking the soft persimmon to pinch. I've been underestimated. Mariehua's Dustless couldn't help but smile, and immediately her pupils flashed with a murderous intent. Obviously, Gecko Moria, compared with 100 Beast Kaido and Z, Tendo Uchiha Madara is easier to deal with. Hurry up and purify the air from the human world, you eyesore. His eyes were focused on Gecko Moria, and Tendo Uchiha's pupils turned sharply, and the scarlet eternal Manjikyu Sharingan from hell descended. What's going on with this disgusting feeling? Bastard, just a look makes my soul tremble? Z or Kaido may not feel it, but Gecko Moria is different. Cold sweat flowed all over his body, and a sharp sense of death arose spontaneously. You will die at any time. Suddenly, a burning pain suddenly came into his mind, and Gecko Moria's body was startled, and he suddenly bowed his head, and his abdomen was burning with a strange black flame. Farewell. The eternal Manjikyu Sharingan rotated rapidly, and Uchiha Madara's lifeless lips lightly opened. Amaterasu. The flame that was not worth mentioning instantly magnified hundreds of times, spreading all over Gecko Moria's body, and he instantly turned into a black flame man. Hot, it's burning me. The miserable screams of pain were chilling, and Gecko Moria desperately jumped into the deep sea, trying to extinguish the fire all over his body. The ideal is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. What the hell is that black flame? It can't be extinguished? Kaido's eyes widened, looking at the black flame that was still burning after jumping into the sea. He took a deep breath, and immediately looked at Uchiha Madara with an ugly face. The consequences of a devil fruit user falling into the sea are self-evident, and Gecko Moria's life is completely over. Just a handprint, just a move of his eyes, and he killed the former Shichibukai. Z and Kaido looked at each other, and they could see the scruples in each other's eyes. This is as simple as eating and drinking water, and Kaido can't do it. I will ask you one last time, will you join us? Z asked in a low voice. Uchiha Madara shook his head. Whoosh. After shaking his head for a moment, Z swept over like a storm, waving his huge mechanical arm, and the speed was beyond imagination, and you could even hear the sharp explosion. If I don't agree, you choose to kill me? You really gave up your former identity as a Marine Admiral, and now you are just a pirate blinded by hatred. That's all. Chapter 883. If you don't agree you're going to kill me? You really gave up your former identity as an admiral. Now you're just a pirate blinded by hatred. That's all. Hearing Wu Chen's words, the murderous aura on Zi's rough face didn't show any sign of slowing down. Instead, because of Madara's words, the sharp edge of his mechanical arm became even sharper. As we all know, Z hates pirates the most in his life. But now, Madara actually compared him to a pirate. The anger in his heart was self-evident. Boom. At the moment of contact with Dustless, a fierce repulsive force came from the front. Z, who didn't feel it, immediately clenched his teeth and used all the strength in his body to dive down. He thought that he could break through this invisible repulsive defense, but the reality was different from his imagination. Shinra Tensei. As Madara's voice fell, the repulsive force suddenly increased. Z was like a cannonball. He was forced to retreat more than 10 meters before stopping. 500 million newcomer, don't forget about me. 100 Beast Kaido laughed. His domineering aura was particularly frightening. It was as if the sky and water were connected. His developed and explosive muscles revealed a world-destroying power that was no weaker than Whitebeard's. The strength of each of the Yonko, 4 emperors, is enough to crush an era. Boom. The harsh roar shook the sky, and a supreme overbearing force went straight into the sky. The flowing air was easily crushed, and the lazy clouds in the sky couldn't escape the nightmare and disappeared. Over the island, an endless dark crack was clearly visible. Kakaka. Even the whole island was slightly trembling. The particles on the ground jumped, and around the island the soil was constantly peeling off. It was no different from a big earthquake. Is this your momentum? Uchiha Madara looked up and said inexplicably. Kaido's invincible momentum stagnated. His tone was plain, without any sadness or joy. Could it be that you're scared? Being afraid is useless. I want you to understand the price of offending one of the Yonko, 4 emperors. Kaido grinned with arrogance. Hearing this, Tendo Uchiha Madara glanced at him with pity and said mercilessly, what I mean is, even compared to the old Whitebeard, there is still a world of difference. It's amazing, a rookie like you can actually reach the position of one of the Yonko, 4 emperors. Uchiha Madara showed a stunned expression. Dustless, who was far away in Mariehua, had a sharp tongue. This naked disdain was probably countless times more uncomfortable than beating Kaido up. Sure enough, just as Dustless had imagined, 100 Beast Kaido's old face turned red. The black fist was bigger than Uchiha Madara's head, and it carried a powerful force that could flatten an entire island. The target was Uchiha Madara, who was standing still. No matter how arrogant you are, you should pay attention to who is in front of you. I am Kaido the 100 Beast. His eyes were blood red and his dark fist was even sharper. Kaido's nose was crooked from anger. Looking at his sight, Uchiha Madara ignored his existence, and his eyes were half closed as if he was about to fall asleep. Don't shout so loudly. I know you are Kaido. I also know you are a Yonko, 4 emperors. But, picking his ears, Uchiha Madara showed that he wasn't deaf, and then his face turned cold. But, today is the day when you, the brainless beast, will fall. Dustless has made up his mind to make Kaido the animal path of the 6 paths. Of course, this is also his blessing. Disappear for me. The moment he got close to Uchiha Madara, in order to avoid the same trick as Z, Kaido jumped up. His huge body completely ignored the existence of the law of gravity and fell from the sky. You think you're smart? Looking up at the falling Kaido, Dustless sneered again and again. Uchiha Madara also reacted. His Rinnegan swayed with dangerous ripples, and a more majestic repulsive force gushed out like an unstoppable volcanic eruption. The scale covered the entire island. Super Shinra Tensei. The destructive shockwave destroyed the heavens and the earth, and the entire island was razed to the ground. The soil deep underground was dug up, and the entire island was flattened. Even the mountains in the distance were instantly disintegrated. This overwhelming force was beyond imagination. And Kaido? He was nowhere to be seen. Pucci. On the beach 200 meters away from Uchiha Madara, Kaido fell to the ground. His face was pale, his whole body was trembling, and there were visible blood stains on the corner of his mouth. His skin was intact and looked unscathed, but in fact at that moment Kaido was in the middle of the attack, and more than 80% of the attack was withstood by him. Damn, fortunately I have armament hockey. Otherwise that move would have crushed me into minced meat. Looking at Uchiha Madara, who didn't move from beginning to end, Kaido's eyes flashed with fear. Even with the defense of armament hockey, he was seriously injured. All the bones in his body were broken, but this kind of small injury was nothing to Kaido. His eyes spread like a tide, and the changes of the entire island were in his eyes. The previously bare island turned into a desert due to the impact of the Super Shinra Tensei. Uchiha Madara's attack turned the sand tens of meters below the ground. Chapter 884. There was no life on the barren island, including Kaido and Z's subordinates. The Devil Fruit army that he had painstakingly built was also destroyed by this indiscriminate attack. 100 Beast Kaido tried to find the corpses of his subordinates, but he couldn't find anything. It was as if they had completely disappeared from the face of the earth. Don't look for them. They were all dismembered, or the strong ones resisted the attack of Shinra Tensei and were blown into the ocean to feed the Sea Kings. Uchiha Madara calmly explained as if what he did was trivial. Don't feel lonely, it won't be long before you accompany your beloved crew. You don't have to thank me. Hearing this, Kaido's face turned black, and his whole body trembled with anger. He didn't expect Uchiha Madara to be so arrogant. Although my crew respects me on the surface, they hate me in their hearts, but they can't suppress it. And the one who is going to be buried with them is you. With a sneer, Kaido's body changed dramatically, and the damage he suffered was instantly healed. His body squeezed sharply, and in a flash he sneaked into the ground. This guy's devil fruit ability is really strange. It seems that he can turn into any creature he has ever seen. Dustless muttered under Mariehua's control. More than 10 years ago, during the election of the Jianghu 4 emperors, he was lucky enough to fight with Kaido. At that time he even strangely turned into a shark and wandered at the bottom of the sea. Ka. The ground at Uchiha Madara's feet shattered, and a strange creature poked its head out, and a big hairy hand grabbed Madara's legs. A rat's head popped out. Since you can, ha! Kaido, who turned into a large rat, laughed proudly, and his voice was unprecedentedly sharp and disgusting. You have to understand that I am the king of beasts, no matter what creature I can turn into. This is why I am called the world's strongest creature. Whether it is an iceberg or a sea of fire, I can turn into any kind of creature and survive in the most reasonable way. My adaptability is extremely strong whether it is sea, land, or air. I've known about your fruit's ability since many years ago. That's not what surprised me. Tendo Uchiha Madara's calm words made Kaido stunned. A pair of round eyes circled around Uchiha Madara with doubt. The reason why I'm surprised is, I've lived 3 lives and I've lived for nearly 100 years. I've seen countless incredible things, but it's the first time I've seen a professional mouse that can dig holes as fast as you. So I'm sorry to have surprised you. Uchiha Madara's words directly made Kaido vomit blood. His eyes were bloodshot, and his sharp claws were about to tear Uchiha Madara apart when black flames fell from the sky. Tensho. Kaido was obviously alarmed by the presence of danger, and in an instant, he returned to the ground and immediately reappeared 10 meters away from Madara in his human form. Renkyaku. Madara narrowed his eyes and focused on the white light. Kaka? In fact, due to its terrifying power, it even caused incomparable cracks to appear on the ground. It was a ghastly sight. Once a human came into contact with it, there was no doubt that they would be easily torn in half. Tensho. The white light suddenly turned into a black ghost fire, and just like Gecko Moria, the weak ghost fire was instantly magnified 100 times and was easily swallowed. Immediately, he stared at Z. Madara's face flashed with a cruel expression. Dustless is not a kind person, especially a crazy guy like Z. He will never be soft-hearted. This time he really wanted to kill him. A former Marine admiral gave up his means and turned to cooperate with pirates. If he can do this kind of thing, then he can't be at ease with other crazy things. For this kind of person who has no bottom line, Dustless will never go easy on him, even if he is just an old man with few years left to live. It wasn't that Wu Chen was cold-hearted, but it was Z himself who put himself in a dead end. If he was willing to leave, even if he had to conceal his identity, Wu Chen could still turn a blind eye to it, but he chose to step into hell. Let's go together. Z gave a look to Kaido, indicating that they should join forces to besiege Madara. Since one person can't do it, then the two of them will go together. There is no need to pay attention to morality for pirates. No problem. Kaido nodded, and this time he agreed with Z's decision. Whoosh! A sharp sound pierced through the air and the two disappeared. Kaido and Z attacked from 2 directions, and their fists gathered enough power to flatten a mountain. This kind of weak pincer attack is full of flaws. Uchiha Madara's eyes emitted a cold luster, and his cold eyes emitted killing intent and cruelty. Since he has made up his mind to kill Z, he will not let this old guy go. Although Z deserves sympathy, Dustless is not the kind of person who is full of sympathy. Chapter 885. The two roaring winds were extremely powerful, rolling up a cloud of dust. Kaido's strength is needless to say, as one of the Yonko, it shows how strong he is. Even the old Z can easily shake the earth, and his whole body is filled with an oppressive momentum. Crush blast. The strong bombardment came out from the mechanical arm, and the target was naturally the only enemy, Uchiha Madara. At the same time, Kaido attacked from another direction with the power to destroy the world. Naive? How can this kind of superficial attack work? Uchiha Madara's whole body was covered in a dark blue brilliance, and a huge chakra condensed around him. Boom boom boom, there is no doubt that the intensive bombardment all hit Uchiha Madara, setting off a huge shock, and a blazing fire slowly rose from Uchiha Madara's body. You're lucky, but then again. Z's mechanical arm is very powerful, and it can restrain Kairoseki. Even if that kid doesn't die, he will be seriously injured. Seeing the blazing fire, Kaido's footsteps suddenly stopped, and immediately felt the high temperature of the fire, and immediately retreated. Z once said that his mechanical arm was built by a mad scientist of the marine, and he estimated that it was Vegapunk. Even if he doesn't die, he will be seriously injured. It's difficult for this kind of attack to touch me, let alone seriously injure or even kill me. Dustless, who was controlling Uchiha Madara, sneered again and again, and a ray of dark blue light shot out from the black smoke, and a shadow of despair appeared in the place covered by the radiation. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the dark blue arm shot out from the smoke, setting off a hurricane, and the flames around Uchiha Madara also disappeared. The giant's ferocious appearance was revealed. He's unscathed? And what the hell is this? 100 Beast Kaido and Z exclaimed at the same time. The shock in their eyes was clearly visible. This ugly giant was holding two glowing blue light swords and had infinite power. Just a mature Kansusanu is enough to deal with you? Staring at Z, Dustless and Mariehua was indifferent. Since Z chose to go against him, Dustless can only control Tendo Uchiha Madara to kill him. He was caught in a trap of his own making. He had no choice but to form an alliance against Dustless. He only had himself to blame. Roar roar roar. The mature body Kansusanu roared towards the sky, venting its joy and excitement of breaking out of the cage. Immediately, its thick arms danced and the azure light sword swayed along with it. An awe-inspiring light whizzed out. Swish, swish. Two huge blue lights came from the front and tore the ground apart like paper. They were unstoppable. They were only inches away from Z. You want to kill me? It's not that simple. His eyes shone with an awe-inspiring luster. He was no different from a wild beast that had been forced into a corner. His entire being was filled with hysterical madness. Ka ka ka. The gigantic mechanical arm suddenly smashed into the ground, easily shattering it. Hideous cracks appeared on the ground, and a fat gust of wind rushed forward. Shattering tornado. The hurricane that was as sharp as a blade met the incoming slash head-on. Z's face was full of hope. He was counting on this violent hurricane to offset Uchiha Madara's attack, but the cruel reality turned his hope into despair. Boom boom boom. The moment the two impacts collided, the hurricane that Z had high hopes for was destroyed by Kansusanu's slash. It didn't even splash out the slightest ripple. It was directly smashed by Kansusanu's slash. It rushed towards Z in a more violent manner. Shattering. Z's heart was filled with despair, but he was still struggling. The mechanical arm made of sea stone jumped up and chose to fight head-on. It went straight towards the incoming slash. Without exception, the situation was still one-sided. Ka ka ka. At the moment of contact with the slash, the mechanical arm that had accompanied Z for several years instantly collapsed and turned into particles falling to the ground. Puchi. Not only that, the blue light passed through Z's body, leaving a long and narrow blood-red mark on his old and broad body. This terrifying slash almost swallowed Z's whole body. Because the wound was too deep, it almost split him in two. You could clearly see the internal structure of his body. Z instantly fell to the ground. His vitality was rapidly draining away. In a trance, he looked at the evil ghost that was trying to lock his soul. I didn't intend to kill you, but you chose to blindly confront me. The indifference in Uchiha Madara's eyes gradually converged, and his tone was not as cold as before. There was a hint of warmth and gentleness in his tone. This tone, so it's you. Z was stunned for a moment, but then he suddenly smiled. At first he felt that this tone and the fighting posture was familiar. Hearing the unique tone of Dustless, he immediately understood that the person behind the scenes controlling Uchiha Madara was Royce Nan, or Dustless. Chapter 886. Z was too familiar with Dustless. He was familiar with his every move, every movement, and even his tone. Dustless left an indelible impression in his heart, so Z recognized him in an instant. His vitality was rapidly fading. Z's face was full of unwillingness. Looking at the uninhabited island, his turbid eyes were finally filled with determination. He was not willing to die in such a cowardly manner, nor was he willing to accept it. Looking at the battleship docked on the coast in the distance, his eyes were filled with madness. Are you still going to struggle? Uchiha Madara, who was controlled by Dustless, frowned. He keenly read the meaning of madness in Z's eyes. That hysterical look in Z's eyes made Madara's face extremely cold. A cold wind erupted from his body. Farewell. Z. Chakra surged in his body and he was about to give Z a fatal blow, but his ally Kaido swept from behind like a storm. Don't ignore my existence. Kinsusanu's iron fist covered with Busashoku Haki was about to hit him, but Madara's eyes flashed with pity and several shadows swept out of thin air. Only Uchiha Madara could see them. Wheel grave, border prison. Several black shadows approached Kaido, but he didn't seem to notice them as he was still smiling. His expression as if he couldn't wait to tear Uchiha Madara into pieces was quite comical. Kaido suddenly felt a tingling pain in his back, like a needle-piercing pain, and obvious blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He suddenly looked back, but there was not even a shadow behind him. Kaido became angry and shouted, "Who attacked me? Come out if you dare." His observation haki spread out, and Kaido was shocked and angry. Someone dared to attack him in broad daylight. No one. After a while, through the observation haki covering the entire island, Kaido was suddenly dumbfounded. He searched the entire island, but he didn't find who attacked him. He touched the depression on his back and it was obviously not an illusion. He instinctively looked at Uchiha Madara, but he just saw him looking at him with a playful face. Even if he was an idiot, Kaido understood what the meaning was. The initiator was obviously Uchiha Madara. Even if you stare at me like that, I won't let you go. You will eventually become one of the 6 paths. This is your tragedy but also your blessing. Dustless controlled Uchiha Madara sneered, and his eyes rippled again, and surrounded Kaido from all directions. Boom boom boom, 100 Beast Kaido, who couldn't perceive the existence of the shadows, could only passively take a beating without any power to fight back. He was being suppressed. If a single shadow could make him spit out blood, it was obvious what would happen if several shadows attacked him together. It was a complete and utter suppression. Fight me one-on-one if you have the guts, you treacherous villain. On the ground, even with the Busashoku defense, Kaido was still vomiting blood, and his whole body was covered with visible fist marks, and there were even many burn marks. A mere pirate, saying that others are insidious, the world is going downhill. Uchiha Madara said with emotion and immediately frowned. He was keenly aware of a strong wind whistling in front of him, and he subconsciously looked up and saw Z. Looking closely, it was Z who was rushing over while holding a kinetic rock. Do you want to die together with me? Dustless Mariewa frowned. Z's hatred for him was so deep that it reached the point of his soul, and he didn't hesitate to die together with him. Old thing, do you want to kill me together with you? After seeing the power rock, Kaido's face changed greatly, and his eyes were gloomy. Z gave him a picture of the power rock, so Kaido knew a little about it. If the power of this weapon is really as shocking as Z described, then he will definitely die, and even preserving his body will be a problem. Are you afraid? Z asked calmly with a contemptuous smile on his face. He has seen through life and death, and if he can pull Dustless down with him, then God will pity him. As I said before, this is not my body and it's useless to blow it up. What's more, do you think he can blow me up with this thing? Don't dream. Uchiha Madara didn't hesitate to sneer. Even if the power of the power rock is really comparable to ancient weapons, it can destroy an island after gathering a certain number. It's still difficult to kill him. You? Kaido's face turned green. He wasn't Uchiha Madara, and he didn't have that kind of confidence. Although he is interested in suicide, it doesn't mean that he really wants to die. The power of the power rock is enough to destroy an island, and what kind of sensation it will cause if it reaches a certain number, Kaido felt cold just thinking about it. And do you think you have a chance to detonate this thing in front of me? With a sneer, the shadows around him quietly approached Z and even stood beside him, but Z didn't notice the existence of the shadows. Chapter 887. Dustless couldn't help but feel ridiculous. Of course it's not Z's fault. After all, he couldn't see the shadow's existence. In fact, Tendo Uchiha's shadow was circling around Z. And this guy's clueless appearance was quite funny. You can't blame him. You old thing, how dare you bite the hand that feeds you? Don't forget, I only agreed to cooperate with you after you became a stray dog. You should know how to be grateful. Kaido was trembling with anger. Looking at the purple container in Z's hand, a flash of fear flashed through his eyes. Even if detonating a super weapon like the Power Rock won't kill him, but there's no doubt that the island will be flattened. At that time he may become Uchiha Madara's meal. Moreover, no one is sure if there are other Power Rocks. If there are hundreds of them. Just thinking about it made Kaido tremble with fear. Z, Uchiha Madara's eyes fell on Z's body and whispered, "You have lived for most of your life. Now that you die, you should feel comfortable and relieved." After saying that, Uchiha Madara's eyes rippled, and the shadow responded immediately. A sharp blade completely condensed from chakra swept out. Puchi. The skin surface was torn open, exposing the internal organs of the body. Even if he wanted to crush the Power Rock and drag Uchiha Madara and Kaido down with him, it wouldn't help. He didn't have that ability at all. Boom. Immediately, under the stunned gaze of 100 Beast Kaido, even if he was unwilling, in the end he could only close his eyes. Until the moment of his death, he didn't even know what had happened. It was really a tragedy to die without knowing the cause of death. Dead? This sudden scene was beyond his imagination. 100 Beast Kaido was stunned for a moment, but then he clapped his hands and cheered, "I sincerely cooperated with you, but you dared to plot against me and kill me as well. Serves you right." Kaido's face was full of anger. If it weren't for the existence of Uchiha Madara, he would have gone up and whipped him. Looking at 100 Beast Kaido gnashing his teeth, Dustless, who was far away in Mariehua, sneered. 100 Beast Kaido has the appearance of the Bull Demon King, and even has 2 horns on his head. It is a waste of resources not to be a beast. Don't feel sad, it won't be long before you go to hell to accompany him. Uchiha Madara teased, and at the same time the Rinnegan floated, and the shadow disappeared. He still needs Kaido to build the animal path, so it's not fun to beat him into a pulp. The one who's going to hell to accompany him is you. As the powerful roar rang out, the sky dimmed, and a bottomless black hole was torn out in void space. There was an endless gravitational force that seemed to want to pull the entire world into it. When I'm at my full strength, even that old Whitebeard can't be underestimated me. 100 Beast Kaido was covered in a golden light, and no one dared to look directly at him. He was like a god of war, filled with a deadly threat, and even the ground he was stepping on was gradually collapsing and shattering. "This is your full strength. Is that all?" Uchiha Madara raised his eyelids and glanced at Kaido. Uchiha Madara retracted his gaze as if nothing happened, and the purple Rinnegan was particularly calm. However, this look in Kaido's eyes was a silent contempt for him. He has used all his strength, but Uchiha Madara's no matter how much changes, the essence of an ant has not changed. Whoosh. At this moment, a strange whistling sound suddenly came. Kaido was stunned, and immediately looked up instinctively, but the scene that came into his eyes made him petrified on the spot. That guy can use this trick without limit? What a joke. Kaido was in despair. The boundless number was simply impossible to escape. It was countless, no different from the number of raindrops. Senjutsu, bright god gate. Thousands of redwood fell to the ground, and the earth trembled, and immediately smoke and dust covered the sky, engulfing Kaido's figure. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't. He was fast enough, but the vast redwood seemed to have a long tail. No matter how he ran, he couldn't escape from his. "Let me out if you dare, I will tear you apart." A crazy roar came from the dust. Uchiha Madara stepped forward and looked down at the embarrassed Kaido. His face outlined a comforting arc. "Don't feel sad. In the future, Red Hair Shanks and Big as Mom will accompany you. You should thank me for my kindness. You 4 emperors were enemies when you were alive, but you can cooperate after death. You should thank me for my kindness." After that, Uchiha Madara condensed a straight black stick in his hands, which was used to create the Chikishodo. Gulp. Seeing the ugly black iron stick, Kaido instinctively felt bad and shrank his neck. At this moment, Uchiha Madara gave him a particularly terrifying impression. "You want to?" Kaido's voice stagnated. He looked at the black tubes inserted in Uchiha Madara's body, and immediately looked at the black iron stick in his hand, and he vaguely understood what it meant. Chapter 888. Kaido's soul was frightened. He carefully looked at Uchiha Madara's black conduit, and then looked at the black iron rod in his hand, and he instantly understood what was going on. "Don't tell me you're—" Kaido asked with a pale face. This guy had no breath and his body was cold and piercing. He was obviously a walking corpse. His cold eyes never wavered. He was obviously a mechanical existence. "You finally understand. You're not stupid. Rest assured, you will soon become the same as this body, one of the 6 paths. You don't have to thank me." Seeing Uchiha Madara approaching, Kaido struggled, but it played a small role. Under the shackles of the Bright God Gate, he could only helplessly watch Uchiha Madara approach. "This is your destiny." Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, half a month slipped away quietly. There is no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Z was killed, Kaido fell, and the news of Gecko Moria being burned alive spread all over the world in just a few days. Damn Uchiha Madara. Due to the sinking of the marine headquarters during the War of the Best, the habitat of the world's nobles temporarily replaced the position of the marine headquarters. In the conference room, Sengoku slammed the table and roared. At this moment, the next Marine Fleet Admiral has not yet been chosen, and it was still him. Since this man appeared, every time he made a move, it was earth-shattering. At present, Z was killed by him, Gecko Moria was also killed by him, and Kaido was also killed because of him. Well, this man must be deliberately against the Marine. Sengoku's face turned green, and his huge fists were clenched tightly. Now the pirates are getting more and more lawless. We should immediately choose a new fleet admiral, and quickly recruit people all over the world. Dustless nodded in agreement. He agreed with Sengoku's words. In fact, he deliberately spread the news secretly. The purpose was to disturb the world situation. Kaido was destroyed and his pirate group collapsed, which will inevitably attract the attention of other pirate groups. Of course, Uchiha Madara also got a new title, Yonko. That Uchiha Madara is too arrogant. We must kill him. Dustless was filled with righteous indignation as if he had been greatly humiliated, causing everyone to be stunned. In their impression, this was the first time they had seen Dustless so agitated. Yes, even if that Uchiha Madara is alone, he has been praised as one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, by pirates all over the New World. Akiji frowned and said with a worried expression. Moreover, this Yonko was obviously different from the other Yonko. Whether it was Whitebeard, Red Hair Shanks, or the recently annihilated 100 Beast Kaido, the reason why they could become one of the Yonko was because they had capable subordinates and forces. Only Uchiha Madara was able to compete with the other Yonko, 4 emperors, by himself. This has never happened before. We must kill him immediately, otherwise he will be a greater threat than Whitebeard in the future. Sengoku's face was ugly, and his words were completely out of his throat as he stared at Uchiha Madara in the photo. No, maybe his threat level has surpassed Whitebeard. Killing Z, Gecko Moria, and 100 Beast Kaido, who was also one of the Yonko, he didn't know if Whitebeard could do it in his heyday. Dustless just sat silently with his eyes closed, ignoring everything in front of him like a passerby. 100 Beast Kaido is dead. This world is completely out of control. Those greedy pirates won't be indifferent to this fat meat. They will definitely kill each other for Kaido's legacy. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This is just a conspiracy of Dustless. In this killing feast of grabbing the territory, the fragile pirates will definitely be eliminated from it, and the powerful pirates will inevitably stand out. At that time he will take the opportunity to capture the other side, tame them, and then beat the revolutionary army and the world government. At present, I already have a candidate for an admiral. At this moment, Sengoku suddenly said something surprising. Dustless frowned when he heard this. He wanted to use this opportunity to insert his own people into the Marines' top management. He didn't expect Sengoku to say such a thing. All the Marines looked at each other, including the 3 admirals. Their faces were filled with curiosity. Only Garp closed his eyes as if he already knew about this. Clang clang clang, suddenly, a clear sound came from the smooth floor. Akainu's thick black eyebrows wrinkled, and his face flashed with displeasure. The Marines' top management was having an emergency meeting, and they inexplicably let a bug in. This guy is, even with Wu Chen's unchanging temperament, he was slightly stunned at this moment. The person in front of him was dressed rather comically. He wore a pink coat and looked ordinary. There were 2 obvious knife scars in his eyes. He was obviously blind. Fujitora Isho? How did Sengoku hook up with this guy? Looking at Sengoku suspiciously, Dustless knew that the evolution of the Marine headquarters failed. Chapter 889. The old man dressed a little sloppy and funny. The moment he appeared, he attracted everyone's attention, frowned slightly, and realized that the old man was extraordinary. Mariehua's internal astrolabe is staggered. This guy can find it by himself. Observation hockey is good, I guess armament hockey is almost the same. After glancing at Fujitora, Dustless closed his eyes and settled down. Including the irritated Akainu, everyone looked at Fujitora faintly, apparently curious about this guy who popped out inexplicably. Sit down, Fujitora. Sengoku smiled kindly, giving people the feeling that he was quite gentle. A group of Marine executives looked at each other, and the surprise in each other's eyes was clearly visible. Sengoku's tone was obviously treating him like a friend. Wait. It was someone else who spoke but Dustless. Although I don't mind a strange guy joining us, at least this guy has to report his origin. Dustless's words made Akainu, Kizaru and Akiji nod. Sitting with a mysterious person, especially the strength of this guy in front of them may not be inferior to them, anyone would feel uncomfortable. This old man will smile at Barnacle. Hearing this, Fugitor's performance was quite amiable, which was the opposite of his slightly fierce face. This little fatty. I thought he was not good at scheming, but this soft knife is played beautifully, and his relationship with Sengoku and Garp is obviously not right. If he can come here, I'm afraid his relationship with Air Commander is also good. What is the origin of this little fatty? Is he a celestial dragon like me? It should be impossible. Dustless bowed his head and thought about Fugitor's origin. He was really curious about this person. This is the high-level conference room of Marine. This guy came here like a stroll in the afternoon, and there was no obstruction. It can't be explained by strength alone. Could it be? Impossible, I should be thinking too much, Sengoku is not that ridiculous. His face was slightly stiff, and he thought of a possibility in his heart. Dustless muttered in his heart, a person who is not even a Marine can't be a Marine Fleet Admiral. The Gorosei will not agree. The benefits of Fujitora's position as the Fleet Admiral are self-evident. He is extremely righteous. Once Fujitora sits in the position of Marine Fleet Admiral, the fierce contradiction between Akiji and Akainu will be temporarily suppressed. However, the probability of this happening was close to 0. Being able to become a general was already a blessing from the heavens. Uchiha Madara killed Kaido, Gekko Moria, and Z. Speaking of Z, Sengoku's eyes dimmed. He immediately remembered the tragic death of Z and said, immediately increase the bounty on that guy. It's best to make other pirates jealous and kill him. Sengoku gritted his teeth. He didn't have a good impression of Uchiha Madara. How much is appropriate? Dustless changed the topic and asked expectantly. Not only Dustless, but the Marines' top officials also looked at Sengoku, including Fujitora who had just reported. They all turned their heads in the direction of Sengoku. His original bounty was 500 million berries. This time it's so big it's 1 billion berries. After pondering for a while, Sengoku replied decisively. A one-time increase of 500 million berries bounty, this is absolutely unprecedented. Big Mama is also one of the Yonko, 4 emperors. She is as famous as Uchiha Madara. Now her bounty is only 850 million berries. Isn't it too much? Akiji frowned. Biga's mom has only 850 million berries now, and Tendo Uchiha Madara jumped from 500 million berries to 1 billion? The difference is too big. Too much? I think it's too little. The reticent Akainu said. It sounds like a one-time increase of 500 million berries, but combined with what Uchiha Madara did, this number seems cheap. Uchiha Madara alone destroyed 100 Beast Kaido's pirates. It was completely overwhelming. In addition, there was the former Admiral Z, including the former 7 warlords of the sea Gekko Moria. A little comparison makes it seem worthless. By the way, Blackbeard is also one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, and he is not worse than Uchiha Madara. Vice Admiral Tsuru, the great staff officer of the Marine headquarters, suddenly interjected. Blackbeard, some things will still happen. I didn't expect that kind of trash can also replace Whitebeard's position. I'm afraid he will cry in the underworld. Wuchen couldn't help but sigh. These words attracted a lot of Marines' eyes, and they looked at Dustless with a dumbfounded expression. That kind of trash? These 4 simple words sounded as if Blackbeard was a worthless piece of trash. These things will be discussed later. Right now, I have something to tell you about the fate of the Marine. Sengoku looked around and deliberately raised his voice, and finally his eyes fell on Fujitora. This guy really wants Fujitora to be the fleet admiral? Dream on, there is no way. Dustless sneered in his heart, who can be the fleet admiral? This inexplicable Fujitora can't, because his philosophy is opposite to Dustless's. Staring at Fujitora, Dustless sneered, want to be the fleet admiral? Silly boy, don't dream. Chapter 890. Fujitora's character is actually quite similar to Akiji's, but compared with the lazy Akiji he is much more active, and in some aspects, it can even be said that he is opposite to Dustless's philosophy. I will recommend Isao as the Marine Fleet Admiral. After looking around, Sengoku said something amazing. These words were no less than a hurricane. All the Marines looked at Sengoku in disbelief. They were interrupted by his words and directly fell into a state of petrification. This is a bit inappropriate. The first person to stand up against it was none other than Sengoku's Kazan Akiji. Although Sakazuki didn't speak, his thick black eyebrows were squeezed together, and his eyes were full of anger. Although Borsellino didn't speak, he also looked at Sengoku in confusion. A person who is not even a Marine is so inexplicably sitting in the position of the fleet admiral? What a joke. I don't agree. Standing up, compared with the 3 admirals, Dustless directly rejected Sengoku's decision on the spot. Anyone can be a fleet admiral, but this guy doesn't even have eyes. It's a problem to read a document. Such a person sitting in the position of Marine Fleet Admiral is simply a joke. These harsh words made Sengoku's eyes flashed with anger. Dustless's words were tantamount to a direct slap in his face, and it was the kind of ruthless. Especially on this occasion, so many high-level Marines gathered here. What you said makes sense. Akainu also echoed in a strange tone. Looking for a blind old man to be the marshal, this is really not suitable. This guy named Isao Fujitora, he is not even a basic Marine. Does the fleet admiral think it's appropriate? And his origin is unknown. I'm afraid no one can trust him. Pointing to the expressionless Fujitora, Dustless attacked mercilessly. All the Marine executives nodded, including the 3 admirals. A mysterious person of unknown origin suddenly became their immediate superior. I'm afraid anyone will feel suffocated. Being a Marine Fleet Admiral requires not only enough strength, but also enough qualifications. He is trustworthy. I have recommended Isao to the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. A vigorous shout came from the front, attracting everyone's attention. When they looked up, a robust old man with a mohawk came into view. Empty? No wonder this old guy really has something going on with Fujitora. The appearance of Commander Kong also confirms Dustless's previous speculation. This guy must have an unclear relationship with Fujitora. Dustless still remembers that in the original work, Fujitora sat in the position of Marine Admiral, and now he wants to be a Fleet Admiral. Don't even think about it. These words dispelled everyone's doubts. Sky was a Marine Fleet Admiral before the Warring States period. His information was definitely the oldest. Since he was willing to speak for Fujitora, no one felt that it was inappropriate. The 3 great generals also fell silent. Wait, an untimely sentence spread out. Looking up, it was still Dustless. The 3 generals have concerns, but he is not afraid. After all, the identity of the celestial dragons is there, enough to look down on everyone, and Sengoku and General Kong are no exception. Even if Commander Kong guarantees, it is not appropriate for him to be a Marine Fleet Admiral. At least let the Admiral see his strength. This request is not too much. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled up as he sneered. It's not that Dustless deliberately made things difficult for Fujitora, but once this guy steps into the position of Marine Fleet Admiral, the first unlucky one must be the 7 warlords of the sea. Dustless knows that Fujitora hates Shichibukai very much, and Shichibukai, whether it is Hawkeye or Doflamingo, they are all his people for the time being. Do you want to practice with this old man? Fujitora frowned and asked. Although he knew that Dustless killed Whitebeard, he was not afraid. Practice? Hearing this, the corner of Wu Chen's mouth swept with a touch of ridicule, despising said, "Practice your hand is a bit difficult. I will not bully you as long as you can take 3 of my moves. The position of Marine Fleet Admiral is yours. If not, Kazan, Sakazuki and Borsellino can choose one of the 3. Kizaru touched his chin full of stubble, showing a smile, and his eyes narrowed, looking particularly wretched and cunning. The position of Fleet Admiral, I don't have this interest, but one thing is for sure. As a Marine Fleet Admiral, you must have enough strength, whether it is Commander Kong or Fleet Admiral Sengoku, they are all masters of masters. If you want to sit in the position of Fleet Admiral, you can, but please show your strength, Mr. Ishino. I agree, 3 moves is not much, if you can't do it, I will do it. Akainu, sitting on the sofa with a hat, agreed. Sengoku's face was strange, staring at Dustless, Akiji, Kizaru and Akainu back and forth. The 4 guys in front of him seemed to have discussed it in advance, and they cooperated with each other surprisingly well. But as Dustless said, you can be a Marine Fleet Admiral, but please show your strength. If you can't take 3 moves, you should leave. Chapter 891. Akainu rarely stood in a trench with Dustless. His voice was particularly harsh and full of sarcasm. For fear that others would not understand what he meant, he deliberately stretched out his voice. Just like what Dustless said before, anyone can be the Fleet Admiral. After all, they have known each other for more than 10 years and they know each other well, but this blind man who suddenly popped out is really not suitable to be the Fleet Admiral. Dustless's words just hit Fujitora's face mercilessly, and everyone's eyes were focused on Fujitora's face, but this old guy's face was obviously trained to the point of perfection, and he was indifferent. He didn't even look in the direction of Dustless, he just listened quietly as if it had nothing to do with him. No problem. Just when everyone thought that he would refuse Dustless's conditions, Fujitora answered confidently. His tone was sonorous and powerful, revealing a sense of calmness. But Fujitora raised his voice for fear that Dustless couldn't understand his meaning. Under the perception of Kenbenshoku's haki, he clearly captured the position of Dustless and said to him, "Everything is about courtesy. If I take your 3 moves, I ask you to resign from the position of Admiral, and you will also have to take my 3 moves." Hearing this, Dustless frowned slightly and after a sneer, he said mercilessly, "Who do you think you are?" In all fairness, Dustless really doesn't value the identity of Marine Admiral, so it was originally a deal, but the position of Admiral was not important. But Fujitora's words aroused his stubborn temper. No one is qualified to deprive Dustless of the identity of Admiral, and Sengoku and Commander Kong are no exception. Now this old guy wants to take away his Admiral's identity. Perhaps after Fujitora really takes office, the first one he will take will be Dustless. This? Sengoku and Garp as well as Commander Kong looked at each other. This sudden change was beyond their expectations. It was completely opposite to their original expectations. However, since both sides have agreed, they have nothing to say. If Dustless fails, he will give up the position of Admiral, and if Fujitora fails, he will give up the position of Fleet Admiral. This was very fair. However, as Dustless said, no one is qualified to deprive him of his identity, because this was the original agreement between him and the Gorosei, and it has nothing to do with the Marine headquarters. You're stretching your hand too far, Fujitora? Dustless said coldly and unhappily. His words were filled with undisguised hostility. Fujitora's purpose is to abolish the Shichibukai system, and Dustless's 2 subordinates are Shichibukai. It is self-evident who they are targeting. My hand stretched too far? Maybe, but that's fair. Fujitora remained unmoved, and his tone did not have the slightest intention of backing down. He looked like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Since you want to play so much, Dustless's eyes were as sharp as knives as he promised, I'm just afraid that you'll lose everything. Don't blame me if you end up in a miserable state. Of course, Fujitora said immediately. I don't care about your duel, but before that I have to make one thing clear. Akainu suddenly interrupted and said, the loser will give up the position of Fleet Admiral. In a huge open space surrounded by people, Marines' high-level officials and world government officials were clearly visible, including the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. You go first, lest you say that I'm bullying you. Dustless apologized with his hands and stared at the place about 15 meters away. Fujitora, wearing a pink coat, stood there with a cane in his hand. He had already pulled out a shiny tachi. Even if he was blind, his Kenbenshoku, was superb and he could feel the existence of Wuxia. Even in the dark, he vaguely felt the facial features of Yen. Young and handsome, the corners of his mouth are slightly raised, and he often has a warm and gentle smile. The first impression he gives is that he is approachable, but this blooming gentle smile is only effective on his own people. That bone-deep indifference showed that this man was in a state of despise towards everything, and only his own people could make him open up his heart. Then I'll be polite. A purple halo suddenly appeared, and the void was slightly distorted, cutting through the sky and going straight into the depths of the clouds. Gravity ray. Then the sky suddenly became very dark, as if it was the end of the world, with an indescribable heat. After a while, the sky became fiery red again. A group of Marines' high-level officials were stunned and looked at the sky in unison. This is a big meteorite. He can summon a meteorite. Nonsense, how can he do this? This kind of indiscriminate attack obviously includes us. Looking up, in the depths of the void, a flaming meteorite covering almost 100 meters roared down. The hot temperature evaporated the remaining moisture in the atmosphere, and a lot of water vapor emerged around the meteorite. The scale of this meteorite is really... Looking into the depths of the sky, Dustless, who recovered, sighed and said softly, "Boring, it's really small." Chapter 892. In the eyes of ordinary people, this blazing meteorite that blots out the sky can be called a world-destroying existence. Mariachi was attacked by it, and it is likely to be in danger of destruction. The scale is so large that it can easily destroy an island. Fujitor, you're too reckless. Sengoku scolded unhappily with a straight face. Fujitor's face was full of embarrassment. Although he couldn't see, his observation haki was surprisingly sensitive, and he clearly perceived that several grievances were shot towards him. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, were also in the list. "I am blind, please understand this, old man." Touching his head, Fujitor showed a gentle smile with an innocent look on his face, indicating that he really didn't mean it. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes turned around Fujitor, and finally raised his eyes slightly, and his eyes fell on the large meteorite. Everyone could see the disapproval in his eyes. "Isn't he a little arrogant?" Taking a look at Dustless, Akiji frowned, and then looked up at the falling meteorite. He didn't dare to deal with it carelessly. After all, this exaggerated blow is beyond their imagination. What do we have to worry about? Kizaru leisurely leaned against the treetops, admiring himself. No matter what, this has nothing to do with him. But from the corner of his eyes, he looked at the giant meteorite, and sometimes he showed a stunned expression. Obviously, Borsellino's heart was not calm. Akainu was no exception. His eyes were straight and he looked up at the falling meteorite. His flashing eyes jumped as if he was thinking about what to do when it fell on his head. Compared with Tensei seismometer, it's just a small stone. His calm eyes spread and everyone who saw it was shocked. Only Dustless's performance was average, and then he casually raised his weak palm. "As long as you admit defeat, this old man has the ability to let him return to the original place." Fugitor's confident voice came. As long as Dustless gave up, he would use his ability to stop the meteorite attack so that everyone would be safe. "Admit defeat? When you dream you can imagine the scene that I know." Dustless casually glanced at Fujitor, and the disdain on his face was obvious. This meteorite was just a piece of cake for him, and it was wishful thinking to expect him to admit defeat. His right eye transformed, and the mysterious Tensigen was clearly visible. Immediately, his hands quickly formed a seal. The emerald luster bathed his whole body and wrapped him up. There were several emerald balls floating behind him. Without hesitation he entered the Tensigen chakra mode. This kind of thing is actually the same as the fruits we usually eat. With a light touch, it will break into pieces. Dustless entered the Tensigen chakra mode. Regardless of everyone's surprise, a faint luster condensed in his hand, and immediately raised his small long arm and whistled away. The light that had gathered in his hand also instantly expanded by several times, or even several thousand times. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. The golden light sword tore through the sky, leaving behind an afterimage. The light sword that wanted to destroy the world went straight through the center of the meteorite. The cracks that filled the entire meteorite were clearly visible. Ka, with a loud bang, the falling meteorite directly broke into 2 halves, and countless particles peeled off and fell on Fugitor's face. Cut into pieces?" Fujitor said with a dull face, and there was a deep shock in his words. "This move has always been successful, and this was the first time it was destroyed. I changed my mind now." A voice full of impatience sounded, Dustless followed by saying, "3 moves is too long, let's forget it. I originally chose 3 moves to save you some face. I was afraid that you would lose too miserably. But you don't seem to understand my kindness." "You mean this old man should thank you for your kindness?" Hearing this, even with Fugitor's character, he couldn't help but say with a smile, "I am very happy that you can understand the old man, but, gravity sword, tiger." A powerful chop came head-on, and the invisible light was full of destructive power, and the ground was instantly crushed and collapsed, and it tore towards Yen at a faster speed. It was as ferocious as a tiger breaking out of the cage, and the place where it passed collapsed and was torn apart by a powerful force. With this move, it's already 2 moves. I haven't used 1 move yet, aren't you breaking the rules? Stretching lazily, Dustless yawned a few times in a row, and the reincarnation Sharingan in his left eye twisted rapidly, staring at the meteorite particles scattered at Fugitor's feet, and the corner of his mouth was slightly surprised. Heavenly hand power. Wu Chen was like a ghost that disappeared in the blink of an eye without a trace. Ka. The powerful chop tore the ground, and the strangely missing Dustless avoided the erosion of the chop, safe and sound, and even his hair was not touched. Where did he go? Under the perception of observation Haki, Fugitor, who was aware of the abnormality, murmured and was about to extend the range of observation Haki when a cold light suddenly pressed against his neck. That's it, you lost, Mr. Admiral. The position of Marshal, you are not destined to be an admiral. Dustless, standing behind him with a sword, said indifferently. Chapter 893. Although he could not see, Fugitor could clearly feel the blade at his throat. If he twisted his body slightly, his throat would be slit and he would die. It's too early to say who will win. Fugitor's white eyes stared ahead and the blade in his hand danced again. Ka. The ground that Dustless was stepping on suddenly burst open. The majestic gravity suddenly covered Dustless's body as if it was going to crush his body into pieces. Even Dustless's body began to distort. Under the coercion of this gravity, Dustless bent down and the blade at Fugitor's neck fell to the ground. The Paramecia's gravity fruit. It really lives up to its name. It can be called a perfect and invincible ability that defies the natural order. Dustless's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Beads of sweat fell to the ground like raindrops. His whole body was wet and his face was as pale as paper. His whole body felt like it was carrying dozens of tons of mountains. Dustless could not even straighten his body, let alone walk. In just 2 or 3 moves you guessed the ability of my fruit. You are indeed the strongest general in the world. Fugitor nodded undeniably. The density of gravity increased and the whole ground almost collapsed. However, as long as I want to, it will be difficult for you to even raise your head in front of me. As he spoke, the endless gravity shrouded the area within 30 meters and the ground collapsed. Can't raise my head? Is that so? With a teasing smile, Dustless suddenly stood up strangely. With a relaxed smile on his face, he teased Fugitor. Look, not only can I stand up, I can also jump. Bang. After saying that, Dustless jumped out of the collapsed pit. He was beaming with joy as if nothing had happened. How can you not be affected by my fruit's ability? Impossible. Fugitor's face changed drastically as he trembled. At the same time, the density of gravity increased again and shrouded Dustless's body. The ground around him cracked. Yen, on the other hand, was still expressionless. He stood out from the crowd with a calm expression and was particularly eye-catching. Am I dreaming? Akiji said with a strange expression. Even he was affected by the gravity, but Dustless was unaffected. Not only Akiji but Sengoku and others were also stunned, looking at the center of gravity. Dustless, who could jump and jump, they all had a petrified expression. Ishiao purposely made things difficult for us but not for Louis South? Sengoku and others speculated in their hearts. Dustless's cheerful appearance was not affected by gravity at all. On the contrary, their group of onlookers was greatly restrained. My ability is ineffective. Fugitor said in disbelief. He felt that it was ridiculous. Everyone had only 1 head and 2 hands. How could this guy ignore the existence of gravity? Idiot, it's not that I can ignore your ability, it's just that the difference between our dimensions is too great. Glancing at the sluggish Fugitor with pity, Dustless explained faintly, in fact, my existence has broken your previous cognition. It's normal for you to be surprised. The devil fruit has little effect on Dustless. Everything has its limits. The probability of defeating Dustless with his ability is negligible. The flash condensed between his legs and Dustless's eyes flashed fiercely. If he doesn't teach this old man a lesson, he may dare to be like this in the future. Lightspeed kick. The golden shining leg swept across, and the strength contained in it was enough to destroy a marine warship. Armament Haki hardening. Seeing that there was no way to avoid it, Fujitora made a prompt decision, and his whole chest instantly turned dark, forming a steel-like defense. Boom. Fujitor's body set off a violent explosion, and immediately his whole body was thrown out. He retreated dozens of meters before he barely stopped. His whole body was slightly scorched and he was extremely embarrassed. Gravity sword, tiger. The slash came again and the ground that passed by collapsed, and it was all crushed by the gravity attached to the slash. In the invincible state of the autumn wind sweeping the fallen leaves, it swallowed Dustless. You're really boring, excessive conceit will only show your stupidity. Staring indifferently at the slash, Dustless's Rinnegan in his left eye twisted rapidly, and the 9 mysterious Tomo also trembled. Luan Tomb, border prison. With a cold and low shout, Wu Chen's shadow swept out and easily blocked the attack. With a stride, he shuttled in front of Fujitora and beat him mercilessly. In this world, Luan Tomb, border prison is invincible, and no one can defend or see him. Grumble. After not eating for most of the day, Dustless's stomach also grumbled in protest. He pointed to Fujitora who was beaten by the shadow and smiled at Sengoku. I hope this guy can keep his promise. Goodbye. After that, Dustless left everyone with his back and walked towards the residence of the Tenryubito, and the shadow that besieged Fujitora also dissipated. As for Fujitora himself, even with the defense of armament hockey, his nose was bruised and his face swollen. In fact, Dustless didn't want to teach Fujitora a lesson. After all, they will need to work together in the future, but it is impossible for this guy to be a fleet admiral. The deformed organization Shichibukai must exist now. Although Doflamingo, a disobedient dog, often acts against his master's will, he is still needed to build Pluton. After the Pluto King was completed, Doflamingo would lose its value and it would be dead. Chapter 894. Looking at Dustless, a group of marine executives could only smile bitterly. As a powerful Tenryubito, Dustless did have the capital to be willful. Turning back to look at the miserable Fujitora, a group of marine executives could only sigh silently. It seems that there is no hope. Looking at the bruised Fujitora, Sengoku's face was full of helplessness. Fujitora's dream of fleet admiral has been broken, and the chances of it being reunited are so slim that it can be ignored. This matter ends here. Go back. Looking at Fujitora with a complicated expression, Sengoku sighed. He knew that it wasn't because Fujitora was too weak. Fujitor's superb swordsmanship and heaven-defying fruits could be said to be a flawless and perfect existence. His enemy was simply too savage. In a flash, more than 10 years have passed. Over the years, every enemy they have encountered, Dustless seems to have no right to deal with them. When Marine Headquarters dealt with Whitebeard, it was no exception. He was as terrible as a bottomless black hole. Every time he challenged his enemies, most of them had the same result as Fujitora in front of him. They were defeated by invincible strength, leaving an indelible nightmare in their hearts. Sengoku, who is the candidate for Fleet Admiral? Garp asked Sengoku. After a month, his hair was all white and he was tired and confused. Just as I said. Find an island and let Kuzan and Sakazuki duel, and the winner will be the king. After a quick exchange of glances, Sengoku finally made up his mind. This is also a helpless thing. He originally expected Fujitora to sit in the position of Fleet Admiral, but Dustless ruined it. Not only that, but Fujitor's head was also full of bumps. In a warm luxury villa, Wu Chen swallowed all the delicious food on the table. His secretary, Khalifa, stood beside him. His ghost worker, Perona, carefully massaged his shoulders. Hancock, who was wearing a maid uniform, was also full of respect. Sometimes when he saw this scene, Dustless felt like he was in the clouds, thinking that he was dreaming. Rumble rumble. On the table specially used to place Den Den Mushi, an ugly purple-black Den Den Mushi rang, and Dustless gave Hancock a look. The owner of this mysterious Den Den Mushi is actually Shiryu of the Rain, who is currently undercover with the Blackbeard pirates. I suggest we kill Blackbeard as soon as possible. Without waiting for Dustless to speak, Shiryu of the Rain urged, Blackbeard is really strange, he can devour other abilities and there is no limit to the number. I already know that. Is there anything else? Wu Chen stretched himself, burped and said uninterestedly. He thought that what Shiryu of the Rain reported was top-secret news. He didn't expect it to be such a trivial matter. Although Blackbeard had climbed to the position of Yonko for emperors, in the end, it was still Whitebeard's legacy. Otherwise, if he were to fight one of the four emperors head-on, it would be hard to say who would be the stronger one. By the way, Blackbeard Tich has recently acquired the Tremor fruit. Shilyu of the Rain said after a pause. Hearing this, Dustless frowned and doubts arose in his heart. At that time, the situation was critical, and Blackbeard took the opportunity to escape before he could seize Whitebeard's ability. Therefore he should not have the Tremor fruit. It's because Tich was lucky. Shilyu of the Rain's tone had some rare jealousy and envy as he explained, "You also know that after the death of the Devil Fruit's host, a new fruit will be born. Who would have thought that the new Tremor fruit user happened to meet Blackbeard, who killed him and took his ability?" Dustless suddenly realized. No wonder Shilyu of the Rain's tone was full of jealousy and jealousy. His luck was really against the heavens. However, it also verified the meaning of the old saying that there is cause and effect. What should be Blackbeard's will be his in the end. After chatting for a while, Dustless hung up the den mushy impatiently. After rubbing his temples, he lazily lay on the sofa looking half asleep. "Where are you guys going?" Dustless, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the three women who quietly left. "Perona, come over and massage my legs. Khalifa, come over and make me some grapes. As for Hancock." Dustless looked back and forth at Hancock, and the fire in his eyes was burning, like a beast that was about to devour a human. That blazing look was about to melt Hancock. After eating one's fill one's desire for sex. This was the truth that the ancient sages had ended. You two are doing that kind of shameful thing and you still want others to watch." Perona stomped her feet and her pretty face was red. She pointed at Dustless with trembling fingers. "Enough is enough, don't ruin the image in my heart." Khalifa nodded in agreement. "I'm just giving you two some basic physiological knowledge and I care about you." Dustless quibbled. Immediately, ignoring the three women's struggle, a high-density and irresistible gravitational force erupted from his palm. Wanxiang Heaven's Pull. The three women suddenly lost control of their bodies and fell on the sofa where Dustless was sitting. Chapter 895. When he woke up from his drowsiness, it was already late in the morning the next day. Wu Qin put on his clothes alone and opened the curtains to go to the balcony to bask in the sun, but he found an unexpected scene. A group of marine executives stepped on the ship, away from the port, away from Mariehua, and left quietly. Could it be? Suddenly thinking of something, Dustless looked stiff, and immediately quickly tidied up his clothes. "Master, you are?" Hancock rubbed her sleepy eyelids and immediately opened her eyes and asked doubtfully. "Kazan and Sakazuki are probably going to duel? The place they chose should be Punk Hazard, which is not far from Dressrosa in Doflamingo. If they find Pluton's trace, Pluton, which took more than 10 years to build, can't fall into the hands of the Marine. Perhaps Sengoku and others don't know about Pluton, but the people who just boarded the ship, there are obviously some black-clothed people who are officials of the world government. In other words, they are the confidants of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. When Dustless promised to take care of Doflamingo, it is estimated that Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, guessed the conditions of the transaction, and Doflamingo only has Pluton's design. Maybe choosing Punk Hazard was just an accident. Young master, you're worrying too much." Hancock tilted her head and looked at Wu Qin with sparkling eyes. "And even if the government really gets an ancient weapon like Pluto, it will be difficult to threaten the young master." In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years have passed, and seeing Dustless's methods, Hancock's nerves have long been numb, and the endless cards are enough to ensure that he can sit back and relax. "I'm happy that you can trust me so much, but..." Close to Hancock, after looking at her for a moment, Dustless scratched Hancock's nose and said with a strange tone, "If I turn a deaf ear to it, the ancient weapon that I worked hard to make for more than 10 years. Can you understand the feeling of someone suddenly taking it out to deal with me?" Hearing this, Hancock was stunned for a few seconds and nodded slightly. It was indeed difficult to accept. He had spent more than 10 years to create this peerless weapon, but its first target was not the enemy but Dustless, the instigator. Just thinking about it made him feel stifled. This was too laughable. On the sea there were huge ripples. A large battleship in front of them cut through the thorns. Many passing pirate groups had evil intentions towards this lone pirate group. When they planned to start, they used their binoculars to see the people on the marine battleship and immediately fled in fear. There were more than 2 current great generals. In the smoke-filled cabin, there were only 2 lonely figures. "Kazan, what are your chances of winning against Sakazuki?" Sengoku looked straight at the lazy man and asked with a cautious look. His eyes were exceptionally wise. Although Akiji was still as lazy as usual at this moment, the caution and fear in the depths of his eyes were visible to Sengoku. I don't know. After all, we are all generals. I can only say that I will do my best. Akiji shrugged and sighed. His slightly dispirited spirit carried the determination to move forward bravely. Looking up at the wooden planks of the cabin, Akiji knew that this was a gamble. If he lost, he would lose everything. From his point of view, he and Akainu would eventually withdraw from the marine. If he can defeat Akainu, I'm afraid that Sakazuki will choose the same path as him. No matter what the final solution is, Akainu or Akiji will leave the marine. This is all because of that bastard Royce Nan. He is a good Tenryubito, but he has to intervene in the marine's internal replacement of the fleet admiral. Sengoku's face changed and he began to curse Dustless. If he didn't intervene, Fujitora would be able to stabilize the fleet admiral, and the marine would not have such an unsolvable situation. Creak. The closed door of the cabin was pushed open, and a young figure was reflected in Sengoku's dark pupils. Oh, there are so many ungrateful wolves in this world. I have worked hard for the marine for more than 10 years, and now someone is pointing at my back and scolding me? The desolate sigh was full of endless grievances as if he had suffered a lot, which made people uncontrollably sympathize with him. However, these words were harsh and abnormal in Sengoku's ears. It was more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. You have worked hard for the marine for more than 10 years. The corner of his mouth twitched fiercely, and his expression was gloomy. Sengoku almost spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were burning with a raging fire. He stared at Wu Chen with an unkind face and roared loudly, "If you don't make trouble for us Marines, I will burn incense to thank your Lois family ancestors. Instead of helping the marine, it's better to use them in disguise." In the war a few days ago, the reason why Dustless took action was because of the agreement with the Gorosei 5 Elder Stars. In fact, this is also Dustless's disguise trap for the marine. The purpose is to weaken the power of the marines and pirates all over the world. The fuse of the war was Fire Fist Ace, and the person who captured him was Dustless. Chapter 896. It's no wonder that Sengoku is so resentful. Everything is because of Dustless, which led to the failure of the whole plan. Fujitora not only failed to become a fleet admiral, but he was beaten by Dustless. This is Fujitora's own trap, and he is too conceited. He wants to take my identity as a marine admiral. However, it is a fact that the blind man is not a fleet admiral. You don't want the marine to become the laughing stock of the whole world. Dustless shrugged. A blind old man became a marine fleet admiral. I'm afraid the whole world will laugh at the marine. Even if it's really a joke, it's better than this scene. With a snort, Sengoku retorted. He is full of bitterness now. Whether Akainu wins or Akiji wins in the end, it's a result of killing 1,000 enemies and losing 800 of his own. The contradiction between Akainu and Akiji is known to the world. If Akainu is in power, there is certainly no place for Akiji in the marine. Conversely, if Akiji becomes a fleet admiral, Akainu may not be able to tolerate Akiji. All in all, no matter who becomes a fleet admiral in the end, the strength of the marine will be greatly damaged. It's no wonder that Sengoku is so resentful of Dustless. It's all his fault. He doesn't want to be a heavenly dragon master. He has to run to the marine and make irresponsible remarks. Dustless turned a deaf ear to this. On the battleship, he silently searched for news about the group of black-clothed people. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 3 or 4 days slipped by. When arriving at Punk Hazard, they passed by Dressrosa and Doflamingo along the way. Dustless deliberately walked out, but he didn't see any trace of the group of black-clothed people. Strange. Why are these guys looking for Akiji? Several strange black shadows all rushed into the resting cabin where Akiji was. Their whereabouts were quite strange. They looked around, giving people the feeling that they were thieves. Driven by curiosity, Wu Qin stepped forward, but immediately retreated with a nervous reflex. Let's use that technique. With a faint smile, Dustless's left eye began to rotate rapidly, turning into a mysterious purple Samsara Sharingan, and the 9 Tomo folds were shining, extremely deep and beautiful. Tomb of Samsara, border prison. A shadow similar to Dustless appeared. It was so quiet that the outside world couldn't detect it at all. Not only was this technique invincible in terms of attack, it was also invincible in terms of intelligence gathering. Dustless was also helpless. Akiji left the marine headquarters. He felt strange. Although he and Akainu's views were extremely contradictory, it was intriguing to join the Blackbeard pirates. Louis South, Saint. A broad arm suddenly patted Dustless's shoulder. When he turned around, he saw the commander-in-chief of the army, Sky. At this moment, he was beaming with joy and looked quite happy. What advice do you have? Frowning, Dustless's shadow also disappeared. His face was strange. This old guy must have something to do, and he didn't seem to worry about Akiji or Akainu winning. If Akiji loses, Sky's eyes were shining and he said calmly, even if Akiji loses to Akainu, he will leave the Marine, but he is still a friend of the Marine, a partner of justice, and so is Akainu. That's just your wishful thinking, Dustless said. If this old guy knew that Akiji later joined the Blackbeard Pirates, he wouldn't know if he would vomit blood. For whatever reason, Akiji joining the Blackbeard Pirates is a fact. Punk hazard. Since Vegapunk failed to do a related experiment here a while ago, it has become a dead island. Even if there is a creature that can breathe, it is man-made. At this moment there was a fierce battle. Boom boom boom, the violent roar continued, producing a powerful impact, accompanied by the spread of two diametrically opposite energy attributes. The place affected also showed two traces of burning and freezing, which was terrible to look at. The surrounding was either black with hot magma or frozen by the biting low temperature. Two figures wearing justice cloaks were fighting with each other, and the battle situation was quite exaggerated. Looking closely, the figures of the battle were Akainu and Akiji. It's going to take 10 days and 10 nights. Dustless had no doubt about this. He really didn't know where the physical strength of these two came from. They can be called monsters and their physical strength is endless. 10 days is not short, but it is not long. Who do you think will win? Sengoku leaned over to Dustless and asked suddenly. Hearing this, Dustless just glanced at him and asked indifferently, "Do you want to hear the truth or a lie?" Sengoku was slightly stunned and immediately fell silent. In fact, it doesn't matter who is the Marine Fleet Admiral. Anyway, it's the same for me. Dustless gave an ambiguous answer. Akainu is the Fleet Admiral or Akiji, it has no effect on Dustless. They will not blindly fight against Dustless. Only Fujitora dared to fight against Dustless, so he was destined to be the Fleet Admiral. Chapter 897. With the passage of time, the area affected was getting larger and larger. At first it was only a small area, but as the wounds on their bodies gradually increased, they finally started to fight. Hey, that's it, one dead is one less. Dustless in the distance chuckled. If Akainu and Akiji can both die, it would be best. Anyway, his purpose is to weaken the strength of the Marine, including the pirates. If they can die together, the benefits are self-evident. Boom. The hot white waves swept the world, and the flowing air was extremely hot for a moment. Dustless was slightly stunned and looked at Akainu and Akiji, who were fighting with each other with interest. Although these two are colleagues, the fierce war is definitely not less than life and death enemies. The crimson magma was monstrous. Magma and ice were two opposite attributes. Akainu, as a magma man, had the upper hand and was much better than Akiji. Big fire breath. The magma fist rushed out quickly, and the ice around it evaporated. Seeing this scene, Akiji was not afraid at all, and he didn't stop. He compressed the cold air in the air and turned it into a sharp ice spear. Ice, double-thorned spear. The flashing ice spear contained Akiji's unparalleled determination and directly pierced toward the incoming lava fist. Puchi. Although they are both admirals, Akainu's strength is obviously higher than Akiji's. Although the sharp ice spear broke the magma fist, it was still defeated and evaporated by the hot temperature. The giant magma fist was several meters long, and the ice spear only tore half of it. The remaining giant magma fist was still rushing toward Akiji. It seems that Sakazuki can be the fleet admiral for a reason. Obviously he is slightly better. Dustless shook his head. It's just a simple move, but Akiji is obviously not Akainu's opponent. Although the magma and ice affect each other, Akainu obviously has the upper hand. Even so, Akiji will not easily admit defeat. Ice blade. The cold air in his hand was compressed again, and a sharp ice blade was instantly condensed. Under the refraction of the sun, Akiji's determined face was reflected. He is not that kind of person to give up easily. What a pity. Seeing this scene, Sengoku's face was complicated, and then he turned and left. Just like Dustless, Akiji was already at a disadvantage in this battle. Victory and defeat had been decided. Dustless glanced at Sengoku and immediately left with him. As he left, he glanced at the group of black-clothed men. These guys are the officials of the world government. the confidants of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Just wait and see. With a slight smile, Dustless also left in the battleship. Punk Hazard was left to fight with Akainu and Akiji, as well as the world government officials. Puchi. The ice blade in his hand sliced through the incoming lava fist as if he was cutting vegetables. Boom boom boom. Witnessing this scene, a large amount of magma erupted from Akainu's body, like a magma cave under the ground, bottomless, and magma constantly spewed out from his body. Akiji didn't show any weakness, and a piercing cold air burst out from his body. The cold air extended without limit, covering the entire sky of Punk Hazard as if to freeze the entire island. The momentum of the two men rose to the limit, and a long-lasting battle for the position of marshal was about to begin. Time flew by and 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. The beautiful scenery of Punk Hazard had undergone drastic changes. The sky of the ordinary islands was fiery red, and the karmic fire of the Red Lotus burned everywhere. Half of the sky was dark red. On the other side of the island, Punk Hazard was covered in a thick layer of ice and snow. There were no signs of life on the snow-covered island. The battle between Akainu and Akiji was more like genocide, and all life on the island was evaporated. A slightly surprised voice suddenly came, and the dead world suddenly had a little more vitality. Looking closely, it was Dustless who left 10 days ago. The only difference was that there was a figure beside him at the moment, Caesar Kurang. Originally, Dustless wasn't interested in coming to Punk Hazard again, but because of the inside information from Caesar a day ago, he had to go to Punk Hazard. The reason was that Caesar was building Pluton on this island. That kind of big thing, Dressrosa, is not suitable to build it, and it is easy to be exposed, so I chose to build it in Punk Hazard, Caesar said helplessly. Dustless heard this and nodded gently, reluctantly agreeing with Caesar's statement. Where is Pluton? I hope those two guys didn't find it. Looking around, Dustless asked curiously. Akainu and Akiji were still fighting on this island, and if they found Pluton, it would be gone. Right under our feet, they wouldn't even dream of it. Caesar smiled mysteriously, and his mouth was full of pride. Wuxia was stunned when he heard that. He instantly understood what Caesar meant. About 10 years ago, there was no island called Punk Hazard. Chapter 898. Dustless still clearly remembers that about 10 years ago, the island of Punk Hazard didn't exist, and when it appeared, it was when he ordered Caesar to build Pluton. At the beginning, in order to hide the existence of Pluton, I deliberately hid it. It was safe for a few years, but later, with the appearance of this island, it quickly attracted the attention of the Marine headquarters, and my old enemy Vegapunk was brought to this island to do experiments. Unfortunately, he didn't find the existence of Pluton, so I also cared about it, but this time, it was changed to the location of the Admiral's duel. Speaking of this, Caesar glanced at Dustless, and after seeing that he was still calm, he was relieved. He was really afraid that Dustless would abandon him. At that time, the first one to kill Caesar was Doflamingo. Therefore he had to hold on tightly to this thick thigh. If he wanted to continue to ride on Doflamingo's head and order him around, he had to obediently be Wuqian's underling. Often, the most dangerous place is actually the safest place. Although it's a little risky, it's quite effective. Dustless nodded slightly, and immediately, regardless of Caesar's astonishment, he sank to the bottom of the sea. Caesar did the same. A magical force enveloped him and pulled him to the bottom of the sea. I'm a devil fruit user, I can't swim. Before Caesar finished speaking, Dustless fell into the deep sea, and his whole body was instantly annihilated by the sea. After some bubbles appeared on the surface of the sea, he disappeared from the land together with Dustless. Under the deep sea, Dustless's deep eyes transformed into the mysterious Tensigan, and nothing on the dark and cold bottom of the sea could escape his eyes. The underground of Punk Hazard was beyond the imagination of the world. The entire island was dragged by a giant, special metal. It stretched endlessly and was even larger than Punk Hazard. At first glance, there were countless thick muzzles aimed at the bottom of the sea, which was frightening. According to Caesar, Pluton is the most evil battleship in history. Whether it's on land or under the sea, it can attack enemies. No wonder Nether King is a battleship that was given the title of God. It really lives up to its name. Dustless nodded slightly. It was rumored that the Netherworld King could destroy an island with a single shot. With so many cannons attacking at the same time, destroying the world would be a piece of cake. The one who obtained the Lord of the Abyss would obtain the world. I'm not dead. Caesar was surprised to find that he and Dustless were both covered in a special air cover, which isolated them from the sea water. They were walking in the deep sea safely. Only 90% of the project is completed now. The rest will be completed in the next 1 or 2 years, Caesar promised after heaving a sigh of relief. That would be best. Soon after, the transparent barrier began to slowly float up, floating out of the sea and landing back on the ground. Dustless waved his hand and said, "Go back to Dressrosa for now." After that, Dustless left, heading towards the center of the battle between Akainu and Akiji. Caesar stared at Dustless's back and immediately silently boarded the ship that came to Punk Hazard before. The bow turned around and galloped in the direction of Dressrosa. Kazan and Sakazuki really went too far. Looking around, Dustless watched the islands that were still there 10 days ago vanish into thin air. Dustless sighed with emotion. This devastating blow almost destroyed all the creatures on Punk Hazard. They're still here. Why do these Gorosei's lackeys care so much about the martial selection? Looking as far as the eye could see, the men in black were still there. 10 days ago they were still there. He didn't expect that after 10 days they were still in this place. The Gorosei are not good people. They are instructed by the Gorosei. There must be an unknown purpose. Dustless secretly guessed the purpose of this group of men in black. The martial selection had nothing to do with them, but this group of people waited for 10 days. Obviously there was an unknown secret. Dustless, who was planning to leave, waited quietly. Boom. A black shadow smashed and the iceberg behind him collapsed in a flash. A tall man with wounds was lying in it. His body was burned and he looked decadent. Staring at the approaching figure, he wanted to stand up and fight again, but he didn't have the heart to deal with it. His left calf had melted and disappeared. "It's over, Kazan." Akainu, who came over, said indifferently. Akiji was bruised and he was not much better. His left ear was obviously incomplete and frostbite could be seen everywhere. In this tragic battle for the martial selection, both of them were fatally injured. "Yes, I have reached my limit. Let's do it, Sakazuki." The dullness in his eyes was replaced by relief, and Akiji's tone showed that he had seen through life and death. Sometimes death was also a way to get rid of the shackles. Hearing this, Akainu pondered for a few seconds, and the blazing magma suddenly extinguished. His killing intent was also restrained. He glanced at Akiji, then turned and left under Akiji's surprised gaze. I didn't expect Sakazuki to be so humane. Seeing this scene, Dustless couldn't help but be stunned. Akainu's ruthlessness was known to the world. He had always advocated cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. It was absolutely a miracle that he was willing to let Akiji go. Chapter 899. It's no wonder that Dustless felt strange. Akainu's name is the most evil. The meaning of Akainu is actually a red fierce dog. This is also the name given to Akainu by the pirates. More than 80% of the pirates captured by Akainu were melted alive. "Why don't you kill me?" Staring at Akainu's back, Akiji tried to open his sleepy eyes. His eyes were blank with some doubts. His relationship with Akainu has been opposing for many years. Akainu's footsteps suddenly stopped, turned his head, revealing half of his indifferent face. His voice was very hoarse, but there was an indescribable sense of reason. "Because I have no reason to kill you. At least you are still a Marine Admiral. If I want to kill you, I will wait until you resign to me. If you become a pirate one day in the future, you don't need to say anything. I will kill you myself." When his voice fell, Akainu disappeared from the world of ice and fire. Needless to say, he must have left Punk Hazard. I didn't expect Sakazuki to be such a principled person. Dustless muttered to himself as he retracted his gaze. After all, Akainu, a cold-blooded butcher, has always given the impression that he has a heart of stone. For the so-called justice, he can easily use and kill anyone. Forget it, it's none of my business. Dustless's interest waned as he turned around to leave. Suddenly, from the corner of his eyes, he noticed that the world government officials who had been hovering around were moving forward instead of retreating. After Sakazuki boarded the ship and left Punk Hazard, they strangely approached Kazan, who was now exhausted and had no strength to even truss a chicken. Curious, Dustless also moved closer. He always felt that the thoughts and purposes of this group of black-clothed people were not simple. A few days ago they secretly talked to Akiji. At that time, when Dustless was planning to explore the news, he was pulled away by the board General Kong, so he didn't know what their plan was. With this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, he can listen to the content of their conversation. Wheel grave, border prison. The Rinnegan in his left eye twisted, and mysterious ripples appeared. Wu Chen's shadow was formed in an instant, and he strode toward Akiji and others. Even if it was right in front of them, they would not be able to see the existence of the shadow. Not only was it an invincible move, it was also an unparalleled existence in terms of spying. Mr. Kazan, what do you think of the conditions we discussed before? Do you want to stay in the Marine headquarters? Like your teacher Z being a retired general is also good, he can also train the Marine recruits. The leader of the black-clothed men said. Hearing this, Kazan, who was lying on the ground, closed his eyes. After about 30 or 40 seconds he shook his head with all his strength. Marine, there is no place for me there. Sorry, I will travel the world for the rest of my life. Akiji's tone was particularly comfortable. He felt very relaxed at this moment. The momentum of this group of black-clothed men is not right. Rather than asking about Akiji's future goal, it is better to say, Dustless could not help but sweat for the madness of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. He had vaguely understood what the black-clothed men were planning to do. In that case, the leader of the black-clothed men's calm eyes were replaced by a raging red light, which was replaced by a cold killing intent. Please go to hell, Mr. Admiral. Akiji first heard this and thought it was just a boring joke, and immediately felt the killing intent of several people, and suddenly his face changed greatly. Who gave you the courage to do this? Do you know what is the crime of assassinating a Marine Admiral? No longer lazy and calm, Akiji was angry at the moment. He had been in the sea all his life, and now these ants wanted to kill him. He exhausted his strength to move his body, but Akiji was powerless to find that he could not move at all. The endless battle with Akainu for 10 days and 10 nights had exhausted all his physical strength. Mr. Great General, now that you've exhausted all your strength, you're just a normal human. You're even worse than a human. At least they can still walk, but you can't. The black-clothed man sneered and ridiculed without restraint. Akiji heard this and his dark face could drip water. He forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a deep voice, Who made you do this? Dustless's shadow also stretched his ears to listen. Although he had a guess in his heart, he still needed to confirm it. Do you still need to ask this? The black-clothed man's face showed contempt and disdain and said indifferently, There are only 2 kinds of people in this world who can order us. One is the celestial dragons and the other is the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. In the distance, Dustless's eyes flashed. As he guessed, it was the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, who ordered to kill Akiji. As for the reason, Dustless also vaguely guessed it. But Kazan is really sad. He worked for the world government for most of his life, but in the end, this is the end. In this distorted world, it seems that it is normal for something to happen. Bastard, tell me the reason why they ordered to kill me. I have not betrayed the Marine in my life. Even with Akiji's temperament, after hearing that the mastermind behind the scenes was the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, he couldn't help but be angry. Akiji had served the Marine for about 30 years, and he fell into such a situation. You have been given a choice before, but you still chose to leave the Marine. In fact, this is a disguised death. Of course, this is completely the meaning of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Chapter 900. Akiji rarely gets angry. But that doesn't mean that he is a wooden man who never gets angry. Often, the more good-tempered a person is, the more terrible he is when he gets angry. Even though Akiji's physical strength was severely overdrawn at the moment, the strong temperament of a generalissimo did not change. Being betrayed by the government he trusted the most, the blow to Akiji was self-evident. It was absolutely no less than being struck by lightning. The world government officials in front of him are also not ordinary. Although their foreheads are sweating and their bodies are slightly bent, in the end they still resisted Akiji's oppression. The 5 elders said that if you are willing to continue to stay in the Marine even if you retire, it's okay. But if you want to walk around the world freely, this is absolutely impossible. The leader of the black-clothed man said. Akiji has been in the Marine for nearly 30 years. During this period he has performed countless tasks, and most of them involve some unknown secrets. If such a character is released, I am afraid that the 5 elders will be uneasy. Just like Z, Garp, and Sengoku, even if they really retire, they will stay in the Marine headquarters to teach recruits. It is impossible for Akiji to travel around the world unfettered. In his career as an admiral, Akiji has participated in countless secret tasks, and even involved in scandals of the world government. Now that Akiji is defeated, no one knows if he will reveal all the secrets of the past. Therefore the 5 elders naturally can't tolerate him going far away. Goodbye, Mr. Admiral. The black-clothed man's thumb was wrapped in armament haki, and he slowly walked towards Akiji, aiming at Akiji's heart. Even if he is an admiral, if his heart is pierced, he will definitely die. Akiji's face was extremely ugly, and his fists were sweating. As an admiral of the marine, he is not afraid of death, but to die in such a remote place and to be killed by such an ant, there is a burst of anger in his heart. And this way of death is definitely the most tragic death of an admiral in the history of the marine. Akiji's heart is naturally unwilling. However, even if he struggled, it was useless. His physical strength was severely overdrawn, and it was difficult to move his arm, let alone fight back. Luogu sighed and immediately closed his eyes in despair. Boom! A silent explosion suddenly fell, and then the black-clothed man who wanted to kill Akiji flew out. Boom boom boom. The leader of the black-clothed man and the mountain in the distance were smashed together and turned into a pool of minced meat and mud. The leader of the black-clothed man, whose strength is comparable to a marine vice-admiral, was instantly killed. Who on earth did this? The remaining black-clothed men were on guard as if they were facing a great enemy. Their insignificant observation haki also spread, trying to take in the wind and grass around them into their eyes. However, even if they scratched their heads, they didn't feel the existence of the creatures. Noticing the abnormality, Akiji's eyes were like torches. Recalling the War of the Best a while ago, a relieved smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He immediately lay down on the ground without any worries. The black-clothed man's eyes kill Kazan first. The black-clothed man's, the missions the ZSTT has, similarly, an incomparably powerful force suddenly attacked, instantly shattering the bodies of several people. They could not withstand a single blow and exploded into a bloody mist. The blood-colored plum blossoms covered the ground. The strength of these people was about the level of lieutenant generals. In the blink of an eye, they were killed by bloody violence. The most terrible thing was that there was no one around, as if it was done by a ghost who pitted Akiji. It's time for you to show yourself. Akiji's tone was filled with vicissitudes as he sighed. After a while, a ripple appeared in the void 10 feet in front of Akiji. Immediately, countless photons condensed and dustless flashed from head to toe. Are you here to kill me as well? Akiji was quite calm and immediately looked at the smashed body. It seems that they are not, they are the Gorosei 5 Elder Stars. What is your purpose, Louis South? I'm not a Marine Admiral now. Akiji's tone was bitter. In just a few minutes he fell from the altar and almost lost his life. His mixed feelings could not hide the bitterness in his heart. If you were a Marine Admiral, I wouldn't have come to you and I wouldn't have saved you. In short, the enemy of my enemy is my ally. Dustless smiled mysteriously, and his light tone was full of endless magic, pulling Akiji's nerves. Enemy of my enemy? Akiji's eyes flashed with doubts, and he immediately stared at the black-clothed man who had turned into a bloody mist. Akiji's eyes flashed. You mean the Gorosei 5 Elder Stars? As a celestial dragons, you should be their immediate superior. When did you become their enemy? Akiji breathed a sigh of relief, and his tone was full of joy. He was not afraid of death, but even if he died, the Gorosei 5 Elder Stars would pay a heavy price. After being slapped in the face, Akiji was not that kind of person. The grudge between me and the Gorosei 5 Elder Stars is not important. Anyway, you don't want to die like this, do you? I can give you the light of life. Chapter 901. One thought between heaven and hell. Now Akiji was facing such a choice. His eyes quickly changed. He still had dreams that had not been realized for the time being, and he was unwilling to die. Therefore, compromise was inevitable. You know what to do. Secretly laughing in his heart, Dustless had long expected this. Akiji was not afraid of death, but the Gorosei's previous actions may have aroused the hatred in his heart, and he absolutely can't die so quietly. At the very least, he must retaliate against the Gorosei. I want to thank them. After a long silence, Akiji said inexplicably, if it wasn't for the ruthlessness of the Gorosei this time, I am afraid that I have been foolishly maintaining world peace for them. Hearing Akiji's words, Dustless smiled. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed in the human world. The situation of the entire world had also changed drastically. In the brightly lit villa of Mariehua, rubbing his sleepy eyelids, Wu Qin crawled out from the bed and stretched himself. On the soft mattress, the three naked bodies were enough to make one's imagination run wild. The delicate white and tender face, the blush and intoxication that had not yet dissipated made people unable to help but think. Looking closely, it was Khalifa, Perona and Hancock. 2 years had passed and Dustless had finally managed to trick them to the point where they could sleep together. Reluctantly getting up from the bed, Dustless carefully put on his clothes. Sure enough, a woman's fragrance is a hero's grave, this is right. Wu Qin lowered his head and smiled bitterly. He put on his clothes awkwardly. For so many years, it was Hancock who took care of his daily life. The meticulous life made him lazy. Now he was extremely unskilled in putting on his own clothes. Soft and boneless white hands came from behind, gently tidying up Dustless's clothes. Her movements were light and delicate, which was the opposite of Dustless. It's hard for you, Hancock. Dustless opened his arms and let Hancock dress him. He sighed, 2 years, time flies. It has been almost 2 years since the last time he rescued Akiji. During this period, countless major events have happened. The most noteworthy event is nothing more than the changes in the Marine headquarters. Sakazuki was promoted to Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral, Fujitora, and a strong man named Green Ox became a new Marine Headquarters Admiral. During the War of the Best, Marlin had completely sunk into the sea, and the Marine Headquarters went to the New World, showing the new Fleet Admiral Sakazuki's determination to fight the New World pirates. "All right, young master." As if remembering something, Hancock suddenly walked to the table, picked up the newspaper that was delivered yesterday, and immediately handed it to Dustless. Yesterday, all the members of the Straw Hat Gang appeared in the Sabaody archipelago and left after making a big scene. Taking Hancock's newspaper, the headline of the Straw Hat Gang sweeping the pacifists is clearly visible. Their progress is really fast. If I remember correctly, 2 years ago they couldn't even fight back against the pacifists. Now they can easily kill them. It's worthy of praise. Dustless slowly nodded and praised. The fastest progress is estimated to be the Straw Hat Manchi D. Luffy. After Rayleigh was killed in the War of the Best, he concentrated on training with Red Hair Shanks, and his strength naturally grew by leaps and bounds. What about the latest movement? Did they go to the Fishman Island? The corner of his mouth was slightly raised, revealing a playful arc. The Fishman Island is not what it used to be. It is completely controlled by Dustless's lover, Princess Odoheim, and the Fishman Island does not need the protection of various forces. It is enough to protect itself. Yes. Hancock was stunned and looked at Dustless with surprise, and immediately nodded. Their ship has been coded and left. Although their whereabouts are unknown, if they want to pass through the second half of the New World, they can only go to the Fishman Island. The second half of the New World or across the Red Line, or this is the Fishman Island. It is self-evident which one is safer. Across the Red Line, the enemy is the world government, which is far more terrifying than the marine government. Ta-ta-ta. In the corridor, the sound of messy footsteps suddenly came, and then a man in black with a restrained look floated into the eyes. Lois Nansaint, your letter. The black-robed man respectfully handed the envelope to Wu Qin, and immediately bowed and asked to leave. Dustless frowned and looked at the envelope in his hand. His eyes flashed with surprise and curiosity. After coming to this world for more than 10 years, it is the first time that someone contacted him in such a subtle way. Puchi. A wisp of chakra overflowed from his fingertips and shattered the envelope, and the content was exposed to Dustless's eyes. That old woman Bigu Momo wants to occupy Sister Odoheim's Fishman Island. Hancock's beautiful big eyes were burning, and her raised tone was obviously murderous. That fat woman wants to eat dessert. It's really not easy, but she doesn't have to do it at all costs. Dustless shook his head. The sender was Odoheim of the Fishman Island, and the content was that Bigu Momo forcibly asked for the Fishman Island for the dessert of the Fishman Island. It's a bit childish. Chapter 902. Although Princess Odoheim and Dustless rarely met each other, the relationship between the two was inseparable. After more than 10 years, the naive and optimistic Princess Odoheim also saw through the nature of the world. The strong were respected. As a weak group, if they didn't want to be destroyed, they had to continue to become stronger or they had to rely on others. There was no other way. Therefore, although Princess Odoheim and Dustless rarely met, as the world situation became more and more tense, and there were riots everywhere. Although the two hadn't seen each other for several years, Odoheim didn't alienate Dustless. Instead, she contacted Dustless more frequently. Master, what do you plan to do? The strength of the Fishman Island is not what it used to be, but it's still not enough to fight against Jianghu. It's a completely unequal war. Hancock said with a slightly pessimistic tone. If Dustless didn't intervene, sooner or later, the Fishman Island would be swallowed by Bigumam. What should I do? Dustless lay comfortably on the soft killing machine, his head on Hancock's knees, looked up at the exquisite ceiling and immediately closed his eyes faintly. In the next few months, this world is about to enter the end. With his eyes closed, Wuxia muttered to himself. His light voice revealed an irrefutable conviction. Even if one sometimes felt that it was impossible, he couldn't help but be deeply immersed in it, unable to extricate himself. You plan to destroy Bigumam? On the bed, Khalifa woke up and rubbed her hazy eyelids. She stared at Dustless and sighed. Are you going to kill her? Khalifa's casual words may sound like a funny joke to outsiders. The Yonko were not idiots. How could they be killed so easily? At first, Khalifa also thought it was ridiculous, but later she lived under the same roof with Dustless, and her understanding of him gradually deepened. This man who hadn't aged for more than 10 years was actually the author of myths. Any incredible thing was easily done by him. Khalifa often felt like she was living in a mythical world. Kill her? It's a pity. After all, he's one of the 4 emperors. He's a good chess piece. He's very suitable to be one of the 6 realms. Turning his head, Dustless looked at Khalifa with a prodigal expression. Although I'm rich and have a lot of corpses, I can't be so prodigal. In the whole world, there aren't many who have reached the level of Yonko. Making 100 Beast Kaido one of the 6 paths is the way to save resources. You know how to cherish resources? How many pirates have you slaughtered? Rolling her eyes at Dustless, Perona said snappily. Shortly after, she suddenly felt that her body was cold, and her hands subconsciously stroked her delicate body. It was actually naked. Bastard. Her charming face immediately flushed red. She immediately grabbed the pillow next to her and threw it at Dustless. Due to her poor skill, it didn't hit Dustless. Weren't you willing to do it last night? Wu Chen's thin lips slightly raised and he said with a playful tone. You dare to say that? Hearing that, Perona was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. She was so angry that she laughed. Her slender fingers trembled as she pointed at Dustless. Obviously she was very angry. Using illusion on others is also called voluntary? Speaking of this, Perona was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She understood Dustless's despicable and shameless character even more. The probability of anyone or something that he valued escaping from Dustless's evil claws was 0. From the moment you became my subordinates, it means that you are all mine. How do I arrange my own things? Do I need to tell others? Dustless asked indifferently. Hearing that, Hancock and Khalifa looked at each other helplessly. Perona's pretty face flushed red when she heard that, and she bared her teeth at Wu Chen. She had crossed the line and tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing the rice used to lure it. She had done this kind of thing many times. She was caught alive by Dustless and it was another merciless destruction. By the way, a while ago, Law seemed to have become one of the members of Shichibukai. Dustless couldn't help but frown when he thought of Tragafar Law. He still saw the surgeon fruit's ageless surgery and remembered it in his heart. After so many years, Law should have the ability to do ageless surgery. He's still a Shichibukai? It's a bit troublesome to do something to him, Hancock said with a frown. What about Shichibukai? That kid thought he was safe when he got the identity of a Shichibukai. Don't dream about it. I didn't kill him before because I didn't have the ability to do ageless surgery. Now the time is ripe, it's time to use him to do ageless surgery. Dustless sneered again and again. The identity of a Shichibukai is useful to others and there will be scruples, but it doesn't work on him. This layer of black and white halo is ineffective for him. With the identity of a celestial dragon and enough strength, he can despise everything in the world. The 3 women looked at each other and chose to be silent. Dustless looked like this. It was obvious that he was determined to clean up Law, who let him do the ageless surgery. An ordinary man is innocent. If he wants to blame, he can only blame himself for being a surgeon fruit user. Chapter 903. The 3 women can only agree, as Dustless said, they can only complain that Law is the surgeon fruit, and this is the only fruit in the world that can do ageless surgery. Law's bag must be made of paste if he thinks he can stay out of it by becoming one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Dustless sneered contemptuously. The only thing that can restrain others in this world is to be stronger than others. Doflamingo is also eager for the ageless surgery? Califa reminded after taking a look at Dustless. He won't live for a few days anyway. Caesar informed me a few days ago that Pluto will come out soon. At that time, Doflamingo will have no value. An ambitious and worthless lackey will only end up being abandoned. Dustless said with a murderous look in his eyes. Califa and Hancock's jade-like chin count, and they very much agree with Dustless's approach. Any traitor, no matter what era or place, is extremely hateful. People like Doflamingo are ingrates. You've trapped yourself in a trap of your own making. Perona's delicate face curled into an arc as she mocked in a peculiar manner. Hearing this, Wuxia glanced at her mockingly, and a teasing smile hung on the corners of his mouth. The palm of his hand was aimed at the area where Perona was, and an invisible gravitational force drifted out. Wanxiang Tianing. The body seems to ignore the existence of gravity, and the whole person is uncontrollably in the air. Immediately pulled by gravity, the delicate body is uncontrollably swept to the sofa where Dustless is located. My own trap? I have used Doflamingo for more than 10 years, how can it be regarded as my own trap but you? Her eyes narrowed and turned into a thin slit, and the gaze that shot out was particularly terrible. At least in Perona's eyes, Dustless at this moment made her feel very terrible. Dustless pulled Perona into his arms by her waist and gently blew a breath of hot air on her earlobe. He teased, "You deliberately provoked me time and time again. You can avoid death but you can't escape punishment. This is called spinning a cocoon around yourself." After saying that, Dustless did not care about Perona's struggle. He skillfully gestured her to swim away. He was not interested in this kind of weak resistance. Its effect was like a poison that seduced into one's bones. It would even arouse the hidden wildness in one's heart, inside the palace of Dressrosa. Pok, 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 pok. Porcelain shards suddenly appeared on the exquisitely decorated floor, and the crisp sound of glass shattering could be heard. Based on the reflection of the person on the floor, this person was undoubtedly Doflamingo. "Young master, you don't have to worry. Louis South, Saint, didn't do anything to us. Aren't you worrying too much?" A large number of members of the Don Quixote family were trembling. Although the angry Doflamingo wouldn't go so far as to disown his family, it would definitely be a nightmare for anyone who didn't open their eyes to provoke him. Yes, you still have the identity of Shichibukai to protect you. Even if he is lawless, he can't hurt you against the wishes of the 5 elder stars. Paika, a senior cadre of the Don Quixote family, said. At this moment each of them was covered in cold sweat, the pores on their body were uncontrollably enlarged, and the dense hairs on their skin were standing upside down. A huge oppression and hostility filled the interior of the palace, and there were countless magical weapons wandering behind them that could take their lives at any time. The identity of Shichibukai? Doflamingo, who was carrying the cadre, suddenly turned his head, revealing half of his blackened face. The blue veins on his forehead were bulging, and there were worms surging inside. It was extremely disgusting. If you had the strength of Louis South, would you be afraid of a mere Shichibukai? A hoarse rhetorical question made the cadre speechless, and they bowed their heads and didn't dare to look at Doflamingo's eyes. I'm afraid that when Pluto's construction period is completed, he can't wait to erase me. And that traitor Gecko Moria, he dared to betray me and cooperate with 100 Beast Kaido, and that he deserved to be killed, idiot. Thinking of Gecko Moria's death 2 years ago, Doflamingo gritted his teeth and said, his tone was full of joy. Originally, Gecko Moria suddenly agreed to cooperate with him, but the result was that he joined 100 Beast Kaido and others, he deserved to die. A group of Don Quixote family cadre exchanged glances and looked at the furious Doflamingo, and they all understood why he was so angry. Gecko Moria disliked Doflamingo, so he chose one of the Yonko, 100 Beast Kaido, and Admiral Z who defected from the Marine. Once I lose my final value, it will attract a bloody massacre. Kaido is dead, we can find other enemies of Royce South to cooperate. Red Hair Shanks, one of the Yonko, and Blackbeard Titch, one of the Yonko, 2 years ago. Even the new Admiral Fujitora has a deep grudge against Royce South. Large carnivores on the verge of desperation are extremely dangerous. Under the oppression of Dustless, Doflamingo can no longer care so much. In the past 2 years, Dustless has become more and more alienated from him, which is an extremely dangerous signal. If he doesn't prepare in advance, Only bones will accompany the end. Chapter 904. Doflamingo rolled his eyes, and a ruthless decision flashed in the depths of his eyes. Remember this clearly, Royce South will definitely destroy us. Doflamingo's expression turned cold as he raised his voice in warning. Immediately, his cold eyes swept across the group of senior officers. It was not that Doflamingo did not trust these people, but they had to be vigilant in the face of disaster. Seeing that there were people who did not dare to look at his invisibility, Doflamingo's lips curled into a cruel and bloodthirsty smile, showing the demeanor of a tyrant. 5-colored thread. The family officers who were afraid of Doflamingo's gaze did not even have time to scream before a complete person was instantly cut into 8 pieces and split into 5 pieces. Seeing this scene, the faces of the family members changed drastically. Immediately they raised their heads and puffed out their chests, looking at Doflamingo with respect and loyalty. Only then did the latter nod in satisfaction, and immediately turned around and left under the horrified gaze of the crowd. If I don't give you a shock, I might disband early. Looking around, Doflamingo sized up the trembling Don Quixote family officers. The corner of his mouth curled into a smug smile, and his figure gradually disappeared. Inside the palace of the Fishman Island, on the exquisite throne that belonged to the king, Dustless comfortably leaned on his arm and took a nap, humming a pleasant tune from time to time. Below him was Princess Aji, who was working hard with her cherry lips. About a few hours later, she stood up with her jaw dislocated. Her charming crystal eyes glared at Dustless with resentment. Then she stood up and slowly moved her body. Immediately, she stood next to Dustless, not daring to put on airs as a princess. Her temper is much more restrained than before. His gaze fell on Princess Aji's gentle face. Dustless sighed. About a dozen years ago she had always had a cold face. She might treat others differently, but when facing Dustless she always had an iceberg face. I also want to find some dignity, but, ugh. Hearing this, Princess Aji complained in her heart. She sighed and felt depressed. She used to put on airs in front of Dustless, but what greeted her was the most ruthless destruction. Where are they? His thumb rhythmically tapped on the exquisite throne. Dustless asked casually. His shining eyes shot out a cold light. Princess Aji frowned and immediately replied, "An hour ago they told me to wait here. They should be here soon." The person Princess Aji was talking about was the subordinate of Bigumamu Bakmas. You are worried enough. It's just a subordinate of the four emperors, and you are scared out of your wits. Glancing at Princess Aji with boredom, Dustless couldn't help but complain. Just a subordinate of the four emperors? Hearing this, Princess Aji couldn't say anything and could only be discouraged and powerless. For you, maybe it's just a trivial person, but you also know the situation of the Fishman Island. Bakmas' bounty is only 330 million berries, but it is also an unprecedented enemy for the Fishman Island, not to mention the biggest pirates behind him. Princess Aji sighed, and her tone was full of endless sadness. In the face of this situation, she could only hold Dustless's thigh tightly, let alone find self-confidence. Hey, a princess of the Fishman Island dares to let me wait? You Fishman Island are impatient. The arrogant voice resounded through the empty hall. Dustless raised his head and looked as far as he could, and a short man with a lion head floated into his eyes. Seeing this, Dustless's dry lips opened slightly, and a sentence directly made Bakmas vomit blood. Little lion, tell Biggaz Momo that the Fishman Island is my territory. Hearing this, Bakmas's rough old face turned red, and the beard on both sides of his mouth trembled, and the hostility broke out of his body, full of endless killing intent. Little lion? No one dared to call him that. Immediately, his eyes followed the source, and the dense murderous aura of his life suddenly disappeared, and his face was dull. Marine Admiral? Bakmas's face changed greatly, and immediately looked at Princess Aji next to Dustless, and suddenly understood something, and the words that came to his mouth were taken back. Not only that, but his forehead was sweating and his blonde hair was wet. Immediately, he seemed to understand something, and forced himself to raise his hands, and then turned them into black fists, covered with armament hockey. Do you want to resist? Dustless took Princess Aji into his arms and smelled the fragrance of her bare face, and asked on her shoulder. Don't resist? When a pirate meets a marine there is only death. Do you want me to wait for my death? Bakmas asked. In fact, he also knew that he was not Dustless's opponent. Since he would be caught anyway, it was better to give it a try. Don't worry, I didn't come here to arrest you. Relax. Dustless waved his hand and said, and immediately the corner of his mouth outlined a fierce arc. The task I gave you is very simple. Go to Biggest Momo. Chapter 905. Pakmus looked at Dustless on the throne. As for Princess Odoheim in his arms, she was ignored by Huali. In this world, only the strong will be respected. Otherwise, even the king of a country will be a plaything in the hands of others. Princess Odoheim is a plaything. She is more like a pet raised by Dustless. The world is so cruel, but at the same time it is very simple. As long as you are strong enough, you can do anything you want. What do you want me to tell my mother? Pakmus's tone was full of vigilance. Mother? Dustless's face was strange and his whole body was cold. He looked at Pakmus's lion head. This guy is 40 or 50 years old, but he shamelessly called Big Umama mother. Not only him but all the members of the Big Umama pirates seem to be the same. It is not difficult to see that this is Big Umama's request. There is something wrong with the heads of these pirates. Shaking his head, Dustless was relieved. If a pirate's head is normal, then they are not pirates. He said slowly, don't be nervous. If I am determined to kill you, you won't even last a second. Dustless gave him a relaxed look, indicating that he doesn't need to worry. He is just a pawn, there is no need to kill him, and Dustless is counting on him to pass on a message. Tell Baigu Mamu to let her live for a few more days. When I'm free these 2 days, I'll take her old life. Yawning, Dustless said hazily on the couch. His lazy appearance was like a thorn, deeply piercing into Pakmus's heart, making him almost go berserk. Maybe it was not because of Dustless's identity as a Marine Admiral, he already went berserk. You Marines want to kill my mother? Pakmus's killing intent was exposed, and his loosened fists were clenched again. His momentum also rose to the limit, and his fighting spirit broke out. You are so loyal to Big Umama, it's amazing. There were ripples in his eyes and he looked at Pakmus with surprise and immediately said, although loyalty is praiseworthy, but you are a fool. You often belong to the kind of people who die the fastest. Swish. A sharp whistling sound came from the front. Pakmus vanished into thin air, and only a black afterimage could be seen rushing over. Due to the extreme speed, one could even feel the wind blowing against them. It's just a lion, but it's quite fast. Patting Princess Odoheim's shoulder, Dustless narrowed his eyes and shot out a strange light. A mere wild beast, it didn't even have the most basic ability to distinguish between the strong and the weak. This wild beast was too unprofessional. Got it? The lightning-like afterimage cut through the thistles and thorns, as if entering the no-man's land in an instant. It was close to Dustless's face, wrapped around the black fist of armament hockey and blasted out. Pakmus was overjoyed. Just as he thought that he would succeed, a strange energy fluctuation swept out like a tide. A powerful force instantly sent him flying. Shinra Tensei. Pakmus, whose expression changed drastically, could not control his body at all. In an instant he was sent flying back dozens of meters. Ka. The exquisite wall in the palace trembled fiercely, and immediately a large hole was left. Pakmus' face was pale, and blood was visible to the naked eye from the corner of his mouth. Compared to his previous high morale, he was now gloomy and disheartened. After all, Pakmus was a pirate with a bounty of more than 300 million berries. Now that he was killed in seconds, the depression in his heart was obvious. Why do I feel that he has become a lot weaker all of a sudden? Princess Odoheim was speechless. A few hours ago Pakmus was still rampant, but now he was particularly weak. Princess Odoheim even had the illusion that she could easily defeat him. Guru, the unexpected sound of Den Mushi came. Dustless's face turned and fell on Pakmus Den Mushi. The Den Mushi with heavy makeup and purple lips was particularly conspicuous. The first person in Dustless's mind was Bigu's mom. The palm of his hand covered the Den Mushi, and an invisible force floated out. Wansho Tensei. The sound of the Den Mushi on the ground immediately fell into Dustless's eyes. Under the curious gaze of Princess Odoheim, Dustless picked up the Den Mushi. Pakmus, you, long time no see. Charlotte Lin, nickname Bigu's mom? On the other side of the Den Mushi, Bigu's mom was stunned when she heard this and immediately roared angrily. Who are you? If you don't want to die, get out of here and give the Den Mushi to Pakmus. That bastard actually delayed the time to send me dessert. Even if he was now separated from Bigu's mom, Dustless clearly felt the killing intent of the Den Den Mushi. As the rumors say, really an idiot who doesn't want to die for dessert. Dustless said bluntly to the Den Den Mushi. It doesn't matter what he said, but Bigu's mom on the other side of the Den Den Mushi was furious. Do you know who I am? I am one of the Yonko, Bigu. I know you are one of the Yonko, Bigu's mom, but I am not interested in your past. You just need to know that I have a unique interest. The cold air froze time and space, and the ice fragments floating in the air were visible to the naked eye. My biggest shortcoming is that I like to hunt the Yonko. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.